Our story begins with the haggard face of a man. He was carrying a huge spike on his back. It was part of a huge defeated monster. They were told that if they didn't finish carrying everything by sundown, no one would get dinner, and those still breathing had to keep working. The man could barely stay on his feet. The captain noticed him and reprimanded him. He was ordered to move farther and faster. This man's name is Zhou Yi, a regular guy trying to survive the apocalypse, which took place in the year 2026. When the world faced a crisis beyond human comprehension, giant insects burst out of the ground, opening countless portals to other worlds. People began to call them the abysses. Within these abysses lurked monsters like nightmares. But the abyss also released a mysterious radiation. A handful of people were given incredible powers by it. They became known as the Awakened. But those who weren't awakened had to do the dirtiest, hardest, most difficult jobs if they wanted to eat. And they had to load some of the monster into a truck, after which they fell to all fours without strength. The captain saw him sitting up and didn't hesitate to slap him. GH was yelled at, accusing him of slacking off and playing the victim. He stroked his cheek and bit his lip to hold back. His cheek was bruised, and yet he wondered if the captain had hurt his hand on his face. The captain said he was a pain in the ass and asked if he could work, and if not, let him get out. He replied that he could. The captain yelled that the bodies had to be moved before dark, and they wouldn't get food until they were done. GG agreed. Suddenly the ground shook. Joe thought it was an earthquake, but a monster appeared in front of him. It looked like a worm with 4 tusks and a round mouth with sharp teeth. The boy turned pale. The whole team was horrified to see that the monster was still alive. They rushed to escape. The captain saw him and thought that running away wouldn't save them. He made a decision. Suddenly a gunshot rang out. Yishoyiri was shot in the leg. The guy was shocked, for he realized everything at once. When he turned around, he saw the captain had shot him. He fell down and the captain ran past him. As he ran away, the captain told him that weaklings should be bait. Now GH realized that the captain had left him as bait so the others could escape. He wondered why. After all he wanted was to survive, and yet it was so damn hard. Joe realized that someone like him, weak, powerless, had been doomed from the start. And he cried. When he opened his eyes, he saw an insect crawling on his arm. The guy figured that only cockroaches had an easy life, because they could eat anything while he struggled every day just to find food. And they're practically unkillable, since even the radiation of the abyss couldn't destroy them. The monster was already behind him, and the guy thought, if there's a next life, being a cockroach wouldn't be so bad. Eventually the monster ate him. In the meantime, several screens came up announcing that human transformation had been initiated and the evolutionary system activated. A bunch of failed reconstruction attempts were made, until by 1,600,000 reconstruction attempts had succeeded. When Yi opened his eyes, he saw a dirty place. GH wondered if he was dead. He raised his hand and it wasn't a human hand. Then the guy went to a nearby mirror and saw his reflection. He was shocked, like what people get when they see a cockroach. Because he looked like one, his scream filled the dumpster in the next second. He looked at his 2 extra arms in amazement, but it felt like they had always been there. The only thing that was out of place was a strange muscle on his back. It moved. They were his wings. They made him take off, panicked and wanting to stop. And then he hit the wall and fell. He realized that when he tensed his back muscles slightly, his wings moved on their own. Suddenly Joe was angry, because if he knew it would be like this, he would have asked for something better than a cockroach. Someone appeared and called him ungrateful. The golden cockroach hovered in front of him, offended that he was mocking the cockroach god's blessing. The cockroach god declared that in 5,000 years, he was the first person to ever pray for his power. He was going to give him the strongest abilities, but now he could see that the one was sorry. The cockroach was shocked. The guy called the cockroach a system, but then corrected himself. Father. Then he apologized. The cockroach god said nothing. Then he disappeared. The system screen appeared and showed that the system had shut down because the cockroach god didn't like him. He realized that he had just pissed off his cheat code. For the next 10 days, he tried his best to call the system back. But no matter what he did, the system wouldn't come back. The other cockroaches saw him and wondered what he was doing. Because of this, he realized that he could now understand the cockroach language. On his first night, he was alone, and realized that joking about turning into a cockroach was one thing, but actually being one was disgusting. He peeked at the cockroaches nearby who were eating dinner. He threw up because the other cockroaches were feasting on shit. One cockroach noticed him and brought him some poop and urged him to eat it while it was fresh. GH turned pale and screamed at him to stay away from it. But the cockroach insisted and shoved it in his face. He conceded it to him as he himself prefers it liquid. Instinctively, Joe slapped the cockroach to keep it away, and the connoisseur of unusual food fell to the ground, and then expressed that now his feelings were hurt. Gigi apologized and explained that it was because his breath smelled like shit. And on the fifth night, the guy just laid on the ground. He cursed his genes because now even poop was starting to smell nice. GH knew he had to find food soon, or he might actually wander into a pile of manure in his sleep. The guy rummaged through the plastic wrappings because sealed packaging usually stops regular cockroaches, but not his. Based on his human knowledge, he expected there must be something edible in the trash pile. He saw a plastic package labeled expired for 3 years. He rushed to open it. The system notified him there was an expired egg yolk paste. It has about 385 calories, and to him it's edible. He thinks it's disgusting, but his stomach rumbles loudly. In the end, he ate it. GH was over the moon eating it. He cried after getting what he asked for. On the 10th night, the cockroach god never came back. GG thought that by becoming a cockroach, surviving the apocalypse would be easier. But reality hit him hard. He felt so miserable that he considered ending it all. But being a cockroach, he couldn't die from falling, drowning, or even poison. His only option was to find a predator to eat him. But since he'd already been eaten in a previous life, the mere thought of it caused him so much pain, it made him shiver. That's what kept him alive. He felt lucky because cockroaches are social insects. That meant he could be king. He'd have a better chance of survival. This led him to think that he didn't need a system, and he could thrive using only his human intelligence. He started with the person next to him, who he called Little Fatty. GH asked him if he wanted to team up with him, but he aggressively turned him down because the guy can't even get fresh poop. He realized that in this world, power isn't about living comfortably. It's about being seen as someone who thrives. The boy knew he needed an opportunity to prove himself. On the 20th day of his cockroach life, that chance finally presented itself. One muscular cockroach announced to his congeners that they were moving to a richer feeding ground from that day forward. They could either go with them or stay and wait to be eaten by predators. One of the listeners cried that they no longer had poop. In Joe's opinion, these cockroaches are the worst candidates for leadership. Then a cockroach burst into tears, saying that he was afraid to go outside. He looked at the other cockroaches and wondered why they looked so scared. Are they really that lazy? The muscular cockroach asked if there were any volunteers for scouting. He told them to speak up, but everyone was silent as fish. He didn't participate since he didn't even need their poop to survive. But a system came up and told him that the god of cockroaches says they won't survive. It also says that if he accepts the mission, he can be forgiven. Without a second thought, he raised his hand and volunteered to lead the attack. Little Fatty was delighted at his bravery. There was a smirk on GH's face as he thought his cheat code had returned. A few moments later, they hid behind the grass. They needed to cross the dam, and he thinks it's easy. But the little fat guy was scared and told him he didn't know anything. GH learned that every time the food runs out, the big cockroaches send the little ones to scout out new places. And this would turn them into a walking buffet for predators. The cockroaches were terrified. The fat man screamed that they could all die and realized it was a suicide mission. This made the GH think that the cockroach god was mocking him by sending him to die as a sacrifice. He yelled out that he was refusing, and after thinking about it, GH realized he had a way to feed them. Little Fatty looked terrified. Joe was confused by his reaction. He hadn't realized the big cockroach was standing behind his back. The one asked him where he was going. He then told him that there were monster corpses waiting for them behind the dam, ready to be consumed. So whoever came first would be the first to be killed. He realized that the cockroaches had evolved to eat interdimensional monsters. It was like an eternal free meal. Joe told the big guy that he was on a diet and let them go ahead. The big roach looked at him suspiciously. Then he moved swiftly and grabbed him by the neck. He told him that if GG didn't want to go scouting, he would become dinner instead. Joe now knows that even insects adhere to the principle of survival of the fittest. When he was a human, his team was sent on a scouting mission, and he was the only one to survive. His team was sent to search for supplies because they were weak, expendable. The leader told them that finding food was a privilege. He recognized this leader in that big cockroach. The one threw him to the ground and told him he should thank him for giving him a chance to survive. He stepped on his head. The guy didn't like that very much. GH knew he had to get his cheat code back, because the ability to eat anything wouldn't be enough. He was determined to get stronger. The scene changed. They were crossing the causeway. He ordered his brothers to spread out and move forward. If anything happened, they should alert the group. He told the little fat guy to stop clinging to him, but he was too scared. So he looked ahead. The kid was very concerned because they weren't close to the river, but there were breakwaters here. The big roaches breathed a sigh of relief that they were halfway across and nothing had happened. They were ready to move because they couldn't let these brats get the best of them. They rushed forward, flying, thinking that if there was danger, the brats would be eaten first, and was annoyed that they could fly and still order them to go scouting. He called them cowards, and someone was watching. Suddenly, he noticed something behind him. He saw big red eyes. He became frightened. Then he thought it wasn't rocks. They were toads. The other cockroaches cried. The toads stuck out their tongues as the cockroaches scattered in panic. One cockroach screamed to run, scatter, and fly. One cockroach was captured. It screamed loudly as it was chewed. Several more cockroaches were eaten. A system appeared to show that a mutant toad had been discovered. She jumps 20 meters and shoots her tongue at 4 meters per second. Its weakness is that it can't see its prey when it's stationary. He shouted for everyone to freeze because they can't see anything that isn't moving. He ordered them to lie down and not breathe. Suddenly, the cockroach god gives E a choice. One choice is to follow the rooster, that is, to choose a safe path to escape. And the other is to save a fellow cockroach and gain his first loyal follower on his way to becoming king of the cockroaches. At first, he thought he couldn't become king if he died. It was the obvious choice for him until he heard the howls of a little fat man. With terror in his eyes, he looked up at him. He remembered his experience then. The thing he wished for most, what he never dared to dream of, was not to become a cockroach. He just wished then that someone would turn around and save him, even when death was imminent. The cockroach god had started the countdown, and GH still longed for someone to save him. He grabbed Fatty and hurriedly flew away, lecturing him that it was time to go on a diet. Fatty said, "Bro, I love you." And GH told him to shut up because his breathing was distracting him. He got worried when suddenly a shadow fell on his face. It was because they were flying straight into the toad's mouth. He knew they were doomed. Then he looked at Fatty and made a decision. He flung him away from the jaws. Fatty turned around and saw the main character being eaten, and he was crushed. Suddenly, a system window appeared and informed him that he had passed the Roach God test. His selfless spirit moved him. Access to the system was restored. He discovered a new trait called devouring all things. He then acquired new abilities such as sticky tongue and acid slime. They were absorbed from the mutant toad. Suddenly, the toad exploded. He was able to obtain a special reward, a step out of the toad's body, and was notified that the blind body was unlocked. He was in human form, covered in green toad blood. The protagonist threw his hands up in the air and said that he was finally back. The cockroach god said that even in the most desperate situations, he had upheld righteousness, so he was worthy to be his successor. And Joe asked if this meant that he would no longer have to remain a cockroach. The cockroach god explained that a cockroach is small, but mighty, and that means he is invulnerable, in any form. Joe confessed that he was a straight-A student in school, so he asked for an explanation in simple words. The cockroach god yelled at him, saying it meant he could keep his human form while having the power of immortality. Gigi celebrated that he was no longer a cockroach. He jumped up high in joy. The cockroach was impressed with him, as few humans would be able to save their insect friend. As he landed after his jump, he felt something under his foot. Removing his foot, he saw a crushed baby Fatty. The cockroach god was angry that he had just stepped on the comrade he had just saved. This made GH worried because now that he had crushed him, he wondered if he would turn back into a cockroach. He tried to calm down because he knew that his survival skills would now depend on his acting skills. The cockroach god called him an idiot, for he too felt foolish for choosing such an idiot. He was interrupted halfway through when Yi cried loudly. He acted as if his heart was broken because he had raised little Fatty himself, and now he was dead. It was so dramatic he even rolled up his sleeves and said while sobbing at the top of his voice. Watching him, the cockroach god realized that Yi's connection with the cockroach was very deep, and maybe he was wrong about him. The cockroach god told him to stop crying, since little Fatty is not dead. Well, more accurately, he can't die because he has become his keeper. So as long as the king lives, he will be endlessly reborn. He was ordered to kill some mutant monsters to replenish his energy, and the fatty would come back to life. They looked at the toads. GH had planned to spare them, but now he thought that was impossible. He made sure they remembered the horror of being dominated by humans. He ran to grab them like he was a colossal from an attack of the Titans. The toad sensed him. She immediately jumped on him. At that moment, she was exactly like Captain Levi. And then she hit him with force. His cheek was bruised. Gigi was angry that this toad thought she was Levi and was fighting Titans. He caught her in his arms. The roach god warned him that the mutant toad was dangerous. When he looked at his hands, there were burns on them because the toad secretes corrosive slime from its body. He screamed in pain and dropped the toad as he continued to shake his hand. Immediately, the toad mistook his naked body part for a small worm and released its harpoon tongue. The tip of the tongue split like fingers and grabbed E's worm. He screamed loudly. It hurt so much that he was yanked upward. Finally, he caught the toad and ripped it away from him. He confessed to the roach god that he couldn't even defeat the mutant. The cockroach god wasn't surprised because the toad was using his abilities while he was just flailing his arms around, and wondered about his abilities. The cockroach god reminded him that he had given him the trait eating all things. If he ate the frog, he would get its immunity. The cockroach god held the toad up to him, telling him that when he devoured everything, he would ascend to divinity. He asked if it could be cooked first, but the cockroach god put it in his mouth, telling him to swallow it. But the moment his tongue touched the toad, more than 10,000 taste buds screamed in agony. It was disgusting. He vomited and said he couldn't do it. The roach god told him that if he didn't do it, he would die since he was already surrounded. As if on cue, all the toads jumped to him. He panicked, but then he wondered why he was whining when he'd worked himself to death and couldn't even eat a bite. He realized that food was now literally being fed into his mouth and wondered why he was still complaining. Then he quickly ate the toad. The system screen showed that eating all things was activated and the creature's features were detected, and acquired eating slime, frog leap, and elastic muscles. After that, he looked enlightened. He told the toads that their tricks were now useless. It was funny how he attacked them, like he was doing a gymnastic exercise. Handsome, almost like Bruce Lee. When he had defeated them all, he pronounced that invincibility was such a lonely existence. Suddenly, a light blinded him. He closed his eyes. The light was coming from a military vehicle. One soldier announced that they had found a naked weirdo who was doing something unimaginable with toads. GH asked them if they were here to rescue him. But in the blink of an eye, an execution order was given. He was shot with darts. Seconds before this encounter, military trucks lined up in front of him. He saw the insignia on them and recognized them as the extermination squad. After all, he had heard of them in his past life. They are humanity's strongest resistance force in the apocalypse. Every member of the squad is an elite awakened. They hunt monsters on the surface and in the depths of the abyss, monitor new abysses in real time, and maintain order around the cities. It has been said that the people living under their protection have already returned to a peaceful pre-disaster life. Facing them, he thought he was about to be rescued, but to his surprise, he was shot. He fell right in front of the car. The soldiers prepared to tackle him. They approached him, but were surprised that he moved. His body shook as he tried to stand up. The elastic muscles were activated, meaning giving him control over his entire body. This caused the darts to fall out of his body. The soldiers found him dangerous. They took up battle positions. Joe raised his hand and begged for a chance to explain himself. A soldier ordered them to aim and fire, but someone told them to stop. They turned their heads. A woman sitting on the roof of a military truck told them to capture him alive. It was their captain. GH began to get annoyed and wondered if these guys couldn't understand human speech. The wheel of the vehicle came into motion. Several bikers appeared, and they quickly surrounded Joe. They had ropes, and they threw them over Yi. The ropes were tied around his neck, arms, and legs. The bikers then accelerated, dragging him behind them. He hung in the air as the bikers separated in 5 different directions. He screamed loudly as he felt his body being torn apart. Veins showed through on his skin. He activated the corrosive slime. It released a highly corrosive slime all over the surface of his skin. The captain noticed it. The rope melted and he was free. While all the bikers were falling off their bikes, the captain realized that he was also an awakened. She ordered him to be caught and everyone chased after him. A soldier with green hair grabbed him by the torso, but the protagonist managed to break free. When the soldier saw his hand, it was smoking because of the acid. He found it interesting. Suddenly, there was some more movement. Another soldier tried to catch the GH. He jumped up high and tried to hit him, but Joe was able to dodge. Debris flew everywhere. Another soldier, this one with a baseball bat, got in front of Yi. Yi had to slide on his knees and arch his back to dodge his swing. GH was looking for his cheat code again. The system activated the frog jump. He was impressed. When he looked back, he was already a great distance away from them. He laughed at them for not being able to catch him. But suddenly he tripped and fell. A purple rope was tied to his ankle. It was done by the beautiful captainess, who had just been sitting there before. She asked him if he thought he had escaped. Our guy was alarmed. He thought he was already safe. She pulled him closer to her. More ropes came out of her fingers, and they wrapped around E's entire body. She jumped down, tightened the rope, and stepped on him. She tied him to the motorcycle and drove off, dragging him behind her. GH screamed, "Mercy!" and they sped away. The scene changed, and now the narrative was in Fortress City. The gates of the Scarlet Bird opened when someone announced the return of Vice Captain Eileen. She told them not to open them too wide because they didn't want monsters to get in. She slipped inside, and when she got there, she stopped. And with the main character flying next to her, it was a rough ride. They led Joe to the Extermination Squad's prison. Two women in lab coats walked beside Yi, with Eileen in front. He told them that he was harmless, and that since it was the apocalypse, it shouldn't be a crime to be naked. The woman on the right marveled that he could talk. She pronounced him different from the previous 12. Eileen told them to keep their guard up. She stated that 12 unknown refugees had shown up in the last week. It's the same story every time. All naked, all smiling like idiots and completely mute. Tests say they are normal people, but she admits there is something inhuman about them. The woman on the left suggested just killing them all to save herself the trouble. The woman on the right replied that if they started executing people, they would be no different from the monsters outside. She told her to be quiet and wait for the results of the gene test. GH realized that he was arrested because he fit the description of those 12 weirdos. Then he thought about the gene test. He asked the cockroach god if they could detect them with it. The cockroach god asked what it was, and Joe realized he was screwed. The door opened. Eileen told him that whatever he was, whether he was a pervert or one of the 12, he should just sit quietly and behave. A woman noticed several empty chairs. She asked another if she had moved the prisoners somewhere, because there was only one left. The woman with the ponytail replied that she had not. She was surprised to see that the others had disappeared. The remaining prisoners sat quietly. Eileen sensed something. Then they saw the prisoners' head expand. They were all shocked to see that they were all floating under the ceiling. The main character asked what it was. The prisoners' heads were like balloons, and this kept them in the air. Moreover, they all had creepy expressions on their faces. Joe was terrified. Behind his back, the bound prisoner roared, and his skull began to split open. Then something came out of it. The GG and the ponytailed explorer turned around. They saw a stump-like monster with mushrooms on its head, 3 eyes, a spiky mouth, and vines. The vines coiled around them. The monster roared. Then it aimed for Eileen. She jumped back to dodge it. In midair, she realized that this was its true form. Bumps grew on the explorer's body. They multiplied instantly. The boils covered her almost completely. So did the protagonist. He didn't realize what was happening. The cockroach god told him he was infested with parasites. He ordered him to chew the spores immediately, or he would turn into a zombie. The monster screamed that he wanted the girl's body. Eileen was surprised that he spoke. She had never seen such a species before. Suddenly, the searchers started moving like zombies. They headed towards Eileen, who caught her rope on the ceiling, and pulled herself up to avoid them. To herself, she complained that dealing with parasite monsters was always a headache. She can't just rush forward and hit it. She knew her abilities were practically useless here, and she didn't have any magic crystals with her. Then she noticed something on the table. There were scalpels there. She grabbed one and threw it. The monster saw it and moved its tentacles. It was using the explorers as a shield. Eileen was surprised. She had to pull back her rope. Otherwise, she would have hurt the researcher. And the scalpel stopped a centimeter from the lab assistant's face. The monster teased her for her cowardice. Yichu tried to free himself from its tentacles and handcuffs. Meanwhile, Yi was concerned because he couldn't eat it fast enough. It was drilling into him. The roach god told him to stop whining and swallow it already. He swallowed it. The system notified him that he had absorbed the parasitic spore, resulting in the acquisition of 45% resistance to parasites. Eileen grabbed the rest of the scalpels and told the monster that he was the one being a coward for hiding behind the hostages. She threw the scalpels right at him. The monster told her that her actions were useless. She asked if he was sure of that. She manipulated the scalpel, and she did it in such a way that it bypassed the explorers. The monster was surprised to be hit. She attached her rope to the scalpel to maneuver it. The monster screamed loudly. As Eileen suspected, its real body is weak. That's why it needs carriers for protection. Suddenly, the female explorers bled on the same parts of their bodies where the monster was wounded. Eileen was surprised. The monster decided to transfer the attack to the hostages and regenerated its body. The girl thought he was a very big pain in the ass. Then the monster pointed out that she was also infected. Until that moment, she didn't know. She saw that her arm had transformed, and it wasn't obeying her. Her own arm was strangling her. The monster didn't give her a chance to clear herself of the spores. And then he was confused when he saw Eileen smiling. She tied her hands together with thread and wrapped it around her hips so her hands couldn't reach her neck. Luckily, she was the one who had fallen into the monster's trap. Her spider silk can control an enemy's body, and she can use it on herself. Using the threads, she threw a scalpel. The monster was wounded. She then pronounced that the monster was unlucky because it didn't take her long to get free. The monster told her that if she kept twitching like that, she would bleed out and lose her ability to fight. And the monster threatened her that if she tried to escape, he would kill the explorers. He suggested that they run away together. She replied that even if the monster begged, she wouldn't leave. It would only happen after she destroyed it. Meanwhile, Yi continued to eat. The monster noticed him because of the crunch. The monster realized it couldn't control him, so it would just kill him. GH saw that he was in a bad situation because he couldn't dodge. Suddenly, the threads wrapped around him, and in one lightning-fast move, Eileen pulled him away. The monster was dumbfounded and screamed loudly at the captain's feet. He thanked her for saving his life. She said he landed under her. His nose bled and his cheeks turned red when he saw her underwear. Eileen was at a loss for words. She realized that the guy wasn't one of the naked lunatics, but just a shameless pervert. GH replied that that's what he was telling her. She told him that since the monster can't take over his body, they have two options. Either they both die here, or she will restrain the monster while it seeks help. Our GH was at a loss for words. He didn't like it, so he chose option 3. Eileen asked what he meant by that. The guy replied that they would team up and tear that ugly mushroom to shreds. She couldn't believe how readily he was willing to give up his life, and asked why that was so. He had a determined look on his face. The question made him remember the time he had been left for dead. And he replied that he hated people who abandoned their comrades and run away when faced with monsters. He stated that such cowards are worse than the monsters themselves. She commented that he was a brave young hero, but deep down she thinks he's an idiot or something. But actually he was ready because the system told him that the monster's real body is weak and the kid will be able to defeat it. He thought that if he won, he would earn a safe place under the protection of the extermination squad. Mushroom complained that even in battle, people still think about how to impress the opposite sex. That's so pathetic. He unleashed a bunch of tentacles. And right towards these two heroes. The guy knew Eileen could control bodies too, and told her to hurry up and take control of him so he could fight too. Eileen released her spider silk but warned him that she couldn't guarantee his safety. The thread attached itself to Yi's body. She wiggled her fingers and said to him, "Go." The guy immediately rushed towards the monster with lightning speed. The monster knew he wouldn't be able to dodge its tentacles, so it wondered how he was going to break through its battle puppet and face the explorer controlled by the monster. Eileen wiggled her fingers. Jadu pushed back with more force and grabbed the researcher and knocked her down. Then the researcher with the ponytail attacked next. Eileen pulled the strings and moved E like a marionette so he could slip between the lab tech's legs. Then he jumped. The monster noticed that he was moving faster now. He was beginning to think that the woman was controlling him. Eileen commented that the monster had a brain after all. The guy was ready to hit the monster with all his might. He shouted loudly, "Die!" Immediately, the monster's tentacles moved. He created a barrier to protect himself. The monster was sure that the guy was too weak to break through its defense, but as he got closer, a trait activated. This trait elastic muscles along with the corrosive slime. His punch reached its target. The monster coughed up the slime. Eileen was surprised to find that Yi was hiding extra abilities. Part of the monster melted away. A large hole was left in its torso. He couldn't believe how strong Yi was. The protagonist smiled. The monster refused to die here, so he planned to endure the damage. But to his surprise, his wounds wouldn't heal. Then he saw Eileen crouched next to the two explorers. She had already extracted the parasitic spores from them. She crushed them in her hands and annoyed the monster, saying she couldn't wait to see what it would look like sliced into pieces. The monster stared at her. This infuriated the ugly bastard even more. Suddenly, the human orbs floating in the air began to twitch. Then they burst and released a liquid. Eileen and Yi were surprised. They saw blood gathering towards the monster. The hole in the monster's torso began to close. Both Eileen and Joe became wary. Then the monster became viscous. Its body transformed. It now looked like a giant red slug with sharp eyes. When it completed its transformation, he looked like a muscular red bipedal monster with 4 eyes, sharp teeth, and a long tongue. Both Eileen and GH became even more wary. The monster told them that they were the first humans to see this form. He hoped they wouldn't disappoint him. In the blink of an eye, his fist was already at Eileen's face. He was that fast. When his fist hit its target, she was thrown back, and she collided with the wall. The guy next to her was surprised. They didn't expect him to be that strong. She could tell he was on a whole different level than before. She saw him reaching for her. He grabbed her head and slammed her to the ground. As he dragged her, a mark was left on the ground. Then the monster threw her off. She was already coughing up blood. She remained lying on the ground in a fetal position while the monster looked at her. He felt the impact hit his body. He turned around and saw Yi. He realized that the attack was coming from him. Joe knew that they were in a bad situation. The monster shortened the distance to him and didn't hold back and hit him. He collapsed to the ground, right along with the researcher. Our guy was already out. The system warned him that all his bones were broken and his internal organs were severely damaged. Since the system detected a fatal wound, the immortality trait was activated. Full body regeneration was underway, and a few more twitches and it was done. Our GH woke up again and immediately whined that he had indeed almost died. He also noticed that the cockroach god was next to him, and the god told him that if he got another hit like that, he wouldn't be able to save him. After that, Yi immediately pretended to be dead. He silently cheered for Eileen and hoped that she could save him. But the monster didn't want to get behind him. It called him weak. But he turned around when he heard some kind of clicking sound, and Eileen was about to kick him. But he caught her foot. She had no idea how it happened. Her leg was pulled. Grabbing her leg, the monster threw her from side to side, slamming her to the ground with brutal force. Then the monster threw her off. She collided with the ceiling and spit out more blood. The monster grabbed the chair he had been tied to earlier. By this point, Eileen was already falling from the ceiling. He picked it up, complaining that it was so uncomfortable. Using the chair, he hit her like a baseball, and she slammed back into the wall. More blood flowed from her body. She was in pain as both of her legs were broken. However, she didn't give up as her arms were still working. Joe witnessed this. He couldn't believe that even Eileen, the vice captain of the extermination squad, couldn't defeat this thing. He wondered if there was anyone who could save them. Someone called out to him. It was the explorer, and she told him to tell the vice captain to unleash her full power. She opened her palms and revealed a red gemstone. Who saw it and reached for it. But there's a problem. He has no idea how he's going to get it to her. The cockroach god suggested that if he pushed his elastic muscles to the limit and rushed forward, he might find a loophole. Joe judged from his calculations that there was a 10% chance of success and replied that this was basically a death sentence. The cockroach god pointed out that it was either a 10% chance of survival or a 100% chance of dying. GH gritted his teeth, pondering. He could only curse as his body began to move. Then he activated the elastic muscle trait, screamed loudly, and rushed forward. The monster noticed him. The roach god noticed that the monster's reaction was even faster than expected. So with that, his chance of success dropped to 5%. He could only go all the way. He jumped so high to fly over it, but he failed. The cockroach god told him there was only 1% left. GH was determined to get to Eileen, but the monster grabbed his leg. He asked him what he was doing and pulled him down. The cockroach god pronounced that it was now 0%. Joe was sprawled on the floor. The impact was so hard that it left a dent in the ground. The monster was about to step on him, but Yi had a determined expression on his face, and he believed that he hadn't reached 0% yet. He knew that this position was his last chance. He threw the rock, yelling for Eileen to catch it. Then the monster stepped on it and called him weak. But he was surprised. and realized there was a problem. His foot didn't reach Yi's head because Yi was protected by spider silk. The monster turned to Eileen, and she recognized that Yi had risked his life to deliver the crystal to her. She was seriously touched. Her legs were bandaged with spider silk. She was using a lot more of her ability now. She released more of it from her fingers. Then she wrapped it around the monster and pulled on the threads. This caused the monster to fall to the ground. Her hand turned into a blade. She calls it the spider snowblade, naked. She then chopped the monster with it, but it disappeared. This surprised her. Suddenly he loomed over her. He then stated that people who can wield their power are still too weak. He grabbed a blade and snapped it in half. Then he grabbed the girl by the neck and pierced her torso with the broken part of her blade. The protagonist watched this happen. The girl was already on a huge bayonet. The guy felt hopeless. The monster was about to stab her again. Suddenly, blood spurted. Suddenly, his hands were cut off instead. And a guy with long brown hair picked up Eileen. The demon looked around angrily. GH was surprised as well. The large, bulky man stepped away from the monster. 2 more men arrived. The monster asked who they were. There was a silver-haired woman with glasses and a tall man with dark maroon hair wearing a brown cloak and a large guy. The woman saw the explorers on the ground. She examined their bodies and said that they were in bad shape as their organs, bones, and flesh were all mixed up. She knew she had to help them immediately. This woman is the captain of the 10th Extermination Squad, Haley. The large muscular man with brown hair was the captain of Extermination Squad 2, Philo. He assured Haley that no monster would walk past him to harm her. The commander-in-chief, Cory Varian, told them that he would play with the monster a bit. He was amused that this one could talk. Eileen woke up and informed him in a weak voice that this monster was different. She told him to be careful. The commander replied that she had nothing to worry about because he too was cut differently. Haley told them to shut up because she needed absolute silence for treatment. She used a greenstone. A root grew out of the ground. She used the runic rebirth technique and enveloped each of the female explorers with a large flower. And the other girl too. Philo placed Eileen on the flower as well. Even GH was engulfed by the flower. He was confused to see the flowers. He felt warm, like he was basking in a hot spring, and it made him want to close his eyes. So he closed them. Until the cockroach god showed up and yelled at him to stay awake. He even injected him with adrenaline. Geich woke up immediately as he was stinging. Haley saw him and was embarrassed because treatment shouldn't hurt. The cockroach god told him he was lucky. He advised him to open his eyes and witness the peak power of the air. Cory Varian introduced himself to the monster. And since he could understand human speech, he invited him to talk to him. The monster replied that one does not talk to food. This confused Cory. Suddenly, Cory noticed blood dripping from cracks in the ceiling. This is what really caught his attention. It kept dripping and eventually took shape. These were the prisoners that had been devoured by the monster. This became his army, and he declared that they would all die there. The other monsters rushed forward, heading towards Haley. Joe was tense, seeing that the monsters were everywhere. Above, left, right, and below. But then Philo adopted a fighting stance. When he struck the air, it released sharp waves, which immediately scattered the other monsters. Meanwhile, Haley was controlling the wind. GH noticed it swirling around the flowers, until it formed a barrier cyclone that destroyed the monsters. Philo told her that he could handle the monsters, but she would have to deal with the blood. She was annoyed but let it pass by her ears. His jaw dropped as he witnessed the power of the captain level awakened. The monster was pleased with himself that he had managed to apprehend the 2 captains. Now the first one he planned to eliminate was Cory. Some monsters turned into liquid. The main monster screamed loudly while absorbing the others. Then his body transformed. Next to its head, it created 2 more heads and arms, one on each side. It was now a giant, ugly monster. The main character exclaimed that it was so unfair. Cory expressed that he envied guys like this monster, since they could get bigger whenever they wanted, and he had to try harder. The monster threw a punch, but Cory dodged it quickly, so the blow didn't hit him. He then teased the monster, saying that it had almost gotten him. The monster got even angrier. He tried to hit him again, but he jumped to dodge. He then ducked low to dodge the next attack. The monster kept attacking, but the soldier was nimble enough to dodge everything. The monster was getting annoyed at him, but he didn't give up. Cory jumped. He saw that the monster had become flexible, and one of its vines wrapped around his torso. The monster told him he was finished. But, our guy, he drew his sword and sliced the monster thoroughly. Then he landed on his feet. While the monster was cut to pieces, Tough guys don't look back. The monster had no idea what just happened. It trembled with fear as Cory approached it. And with a flick of the Kung Fu Panda, the monster's body disintegrated. The Sigma Battle himself watched intently. Now only a small mushroom-type monster body remained. And with one swift movement of his hand, Cory caught it and put it in a little bottle. The guy was so happy to have it. He was excited about catching his first talking monster ever and asked if he could name it. Haley yelled at him to stop messing around and start thinking about how to explain to the council the destruction of a brand new research center. Both she and Philo said in unison, "Stupid boss." He couldn't fathom how powerful he was. The cockroach god asked him if he had seen that power gap. He then told him that he could pass out now. Time passed in one of the rooms. It was like a cozy apartment inside. He slowly opened his eyes and asked where he was. Chu was surprised to find himself in the bathtub. Then the boy turned around and saw something. A curtain was hiding the silhouette of a woman in the shower. He blushed and didn't realize what was going on. Eileen looked out from behind the curtain and saw that he was awake. She rasped and told him that his gene test results weren't ready yet. So technically, he was supposed to be locked up for another night. But since the prison was broken, she had to take him home under her supervision. The guy tried to cover his body. He asked if they really needed to go that far, being naked and wet together. The girl told him off to stop being shy. She then explained that hot water was only available at that time, so there was nothing they could do. She introduced herself properly and thanked him for what he had done earlier and asked him his name. Our guy was embarrassed, so he couldn't answer easily. But eventually he manages to give his name. She told him to move over and plunged into the bathtub. The protagonist looked very uncomfortable. She then told him to turn around and lie down so she could check his wounds. He blushed even more when he felt her hand on his back. The guy couldn't understand why she had no concept of personal space. If this continued, something bad was going to happen. His thoughts were interrupted when she exclaimed that it was impressive. All of his wounds were completely gone, and not even a scar was left. She patted his back and praised his regeneration. The cockroach god appeared and stated that his heart rate had risen to 120 beats per minute, and his testosterone levels had skyrocketed. His blood rushed downward. The cockroach asked if he should activate his breeding mode. HGH shouted, "No, absolutely not." She pointed him to her scar on his chest, commenting that the monster was cruel. The girl openly showed it to him, and his jaw dropped. The cockroach god began the countdown to activate the breeding mode. Before he could count to 1, Joe immediately got up from the bathroom and left after wishing the girl good luck washing herself. Eileen was left bewildered. She didn't realize that she had almost seen the breeding mode. Yi had already come out of the bathroom and was breathing heavily. He knew that if he had stayed a second longer, he would have died of embarrassment. The system was to blame for this. He was then distracted by a news report about the recent spatial fluctuations found near Minhai City. An outpost 50 kilometers away, run by non-government forces, had been attacked. It was the place where Yi used to live. Did everyone die? The news anchor reported that by the time the extermination squad arrived in response to the distress call, the entire outpost had been abandoned. GH realized that if he hadn't left, he was probably dead too. The public was warned that the abysses were portals to other worlds, and if they discovered one, they should notify the authorities immediately. The cockroach god told him to stop screwing himself up. He then told him that he had good news. The crushed buddy, Little Fatty, was the only one who had been able to escape. The kid had come back to life. He was displayed as an Imperial Guardian. GH was intrigued by this. The cockroach god explained that from now on, Little Fatty was immortal, and no matter how many times he was crushed, as long as Yi was alive, he would always come back. GH started to think that was too cool, but he wondered how an immortal cockroach could be a guardian. The cockroach god told him that Little Fatty could also level up. At the moment, he could share his sight with him. The protagonist clicked on the summon on the screen. The screen suddenly began to stir and blink. Little Fatty's hands began to move, and finally he came out. He greeted Yi cheerfully, saying that he had missed him very much. Yes, he had a smile on his face. Little Fatty was saddened when he saw that he had become ugly, as he now looked like a human. The cockroach god advised him to order him to fly. Then he should also close his eyes, and he synchronized with his vision. He saw Little Fatty sneak through the door and slipping through the cracks. He flew over the bathtub the girl captain was in. GH panicked and yelled at him to get out of there. Little Fatty objected that he could feel that E had the urge to peek in there. Eileen sensed it. She released the spider silk and wrapped it around little Fatty. It made him melt, and he disappeared. This caused Yi's eyes, nose, and mouth to bleed. Then a fountain of blood gushed from his nose. The roach god had forgotten to say earlier that when he shared feelings with little Fatty, if little Fatty died, he would receive a backlash. The next day, the test report came back. Eileen told E that everything was normal. The guy looked at the report. Then she told him he was free to go. E had a sullen look on his face. He put down the report. Then in a serious tone, the guy expressed his desire to join the extermination squad. She was confused when she heard this because their mortality rate is ridiculously high. He asked her if she thought the survival rate for regular humans was better. The guy argued that he's an awakened too, and he wants to fight alongside them. The bio is clear, and Joe asked if he could join or not. She stared at him for a moment. She then informed him that the 4-year qualifying tournament of the extermination squad will be held in 7 days. She admits that his skills aren't bad, but there's a rumor that this year's competition will be the toughest in history. Our guy looked determined and asked her to let him handle it. He snapped at her, telling her that she didn't seem like the type to ignore her duty to save a life. She told him to stand up, and then recognized his shameless persistence, so she gave him a chance for special training. They didn't realize Corey was watching them from the shadows. He was with the doctor, and the doctor asked why he'd asked him to fake Yi's medical report. The gene test showed that E wasn't human. Corey smiled and gave him more time to keep it a secret for a little while longer. The scene changes abruptly. It is revealed that there is an entrance to the abyss inside the training base. Then we see our guy shocked by something. He had just found out that the special training Eileen was talking about was to throw him into the abyss. He thought it was a joke. The abyss is crawling with monsters, and the ones inside are much stronger than the ones outside. He then wondered why he had asked him to fake Yi's medical report. It was said that even an entire army wouldn't stand a chance. He wondered how jumping into the abyss could be considered training, and his teammates were only 4 teenagers. Justin was there, Lu Yao was there, Sukai and Suntao. Eileen had informed them that every abyss connects to another world. Also, depending on how much that world has penetrated their world. The abysses are ranked in danger from Class E to Class S. The higher the rank, the stronger the monsters and larger the territory. She told them that the gate leads to the abyss, which had already been scouted by the extermination squad. The girl pressed a button, and then stated that the extermination squad's job was to enter the abyss, mop up the monsters, and delay the other world's invasion of their world. She described the abysses as tunnels left by giant worms during the Great Cataclysm. Eileen pressed another button, and the entrance began to glow. She then informed them that the portal was open. Among the group, Justin had experience in the abyss, so she appointed him leader. He agreed. They walked through the doors and arrived in a quiet, dark jungle, which was classified as Class E. It was a lush jungle, but it was also creepy. The boy was very surprised that this was the abyss. Suddenly, a monkey with a snake tail spotted them. GH couldn't believe it. And the spiders are huge, and the trees are massive and tall. He continued to look around and said that going through the gate felt like entering another world. His teammates were at a loss for words at how excited he was. Eventually, they started to move. Justin turned around and tossed his backpack to E. He warned him not to touch any of the monsters in the abyss, and that he should just stay behind them and carry their bags. The guy was confused. Justin thinks the bastard spent the night with the vice captain. In the back of his mind, he's furious that the guy hit on his goddess. GH lowered his gaze and remained silent. Justin was even pissed off by this reaction of his. He asked if he wanted to, but actually E was happy because not touching anything meant he was safe. He carried their bags enthusiastically. Justin remained puzzled, while E celebrated his safety. Justin was shocked. After all, it was only a child who was led into the abyss with them. The main character approaches the others to retrieve their bags. First up was the only girl in the group, Yao. She coldly replied that she could handle herself. And then they left. In the back of his mind, Yi couldn't understand why he was forbidden to hunt monsters. He thought, but after all, it wouldn't do any harm. Until he saw the awakened in the abyss fighting. Immediately, Yao used the heavenly veil of thunderous wrath. She struck the monsters in a large area with electricity. All of them shook and screamed in pain. Then Justin swung his sword and sliced through several monsters at once. The crystal weapon of the awakened absorbs the abilities of the monsters when they kill them in the abyss. It's like gaining experience in the game. And the more they kill, the faster they level up. Eventually, he learned that even the best awakened in his age group get tired from the constant fighting. Justin had already killed 310 monsters and finally leveled up. But Yi was done differently. He put on his napkin and began his meal. It was as if he was eating at a fancy restaurant, but really he was just eating the dead monsters around him. From this, he acquired a trait called long arms of a snake monkey. Basically, he doesn't need to kill monsters. He just eats a piece of them and gains their trait. He kept eating, and more traits were acquired and enhanced, such as resistance to poisons, jungle adaptation, and more, as well as improving on the 6 things he already had. After a while, he was breathing heavily and holding his stomach. He lay there and didn't move, for he had managed to eat all the defeated monsters around him. He had a smile on his face. He was very lucky to have gone with the squad. Now he could watch others fight and level up by eating monsters. He raised his hands up and started praising the great god Cockroach who gave him this opportunity. The rest of the team was not happy about this arrangement. They weren't happy. While they were risking their lives, the guy in the rear was just living in the cafeteria. The scene shifted to a bird's-eye view of a dark forest where something was happening. Someone huge was running forward and exuding purple smoke. It was a huge horned beast, and it was attacking another monster, the king of snake-tailed monkeys. With just one push, the snake-tailed ape king was thrown into the air and bled out. Gigi was secretly watching from the bushes. He recognized him as the final boss of the abyss, who had easily taken down the almost king of the snake-tailed apes, and realized the difference in rank and the gulf in power. Justin told them that they could do it as long as everyone stuck to his plan. Even though they are a team of rookies, he is determined to defeat him. And he remembered what Eileen said. If he gets hurt, maimed, or worse because he ignored the rules and rushed forward recklessly, health insurance won't cover it. He tells them that Eileen warned them not to fight the boss. With that, he's out of the game. Justin grabbed him by the collar and yelled that no one wants a loser like him. He ordered him to just go sit in the safe zone and guard their bags. Yao remained silent. Justin pointed to the map and told him to stay there. He carried their bags and left and wished them luck. Kai and Tao were satisfied. You knew that the place where the captain had sent Yi was the ambush point for the final battle. Justin replied that it was intentional. He added that he had already stuffed the 4 backpacks Yi was carrying with explosives, and once the boss targeted him, he would detonate the explosives, and they would finish off the others. He had no qualms about stating that it only takes one useless teammate. Yao said, "That sucks." But as soon as she said that, something happened. The captain didn't hesitate to point his sword at her. The guy told her to stop this pity, and he would only let her get away with it once. The scene changed again. The protagonist was sitting at the roots of a tree. He was looting a monster he had killed and was thinking that it wasn't exactly a safe zone. Suddenly, the ground around him shook. He wondered if the battle was so intense that he could hear it from there. Then the guy felt something and immediately turned pale. Something was moving so fast. Several monkeys ran past him. He was confused as to what had happened. Then a tree broke, and he turned around and saw the boss monster running, its sharp horn piercing E. The guy coughed up liters of blood as the boss monster ran through a bunch of trees until it crashed into a mountain. The protagonist wondered why he was there. By this point, his body had already been pierced by its horn. The cockroach god discovered the fatal wound. He banished the foreign object and began repairs, and asked where the whole crew was. Was it destroyed? Suddenly, a fiery arrow was fired. It landed next to the bag and ignited the dynamite. GH thought it was a rocket. Then it made him wonder what was actually in their bags. When he realized it was explosives, it was too late as it had already detonated. He blacked out, but his consciousness was there, realizing that he had been thrown again and used as bait. The explosion was huge. The other 4 watched him from the cliff. Justin laughed out loud. He commented that E's face was priceless and told him that as soon as the explosions were over, they would go down and finish off the boss. The bastard was happy to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You saw something, and immediately alerted the captain. And when Justin saw it, he turned pale. The explosions have stopped. The smoke slowly clears, and E emerged unharmed. His eyes glowed yellow. Justin couldn't believe it. Joe was still alive. Finally, he pulled the horn out of his torso, and his skin had regenerated. The boy was furious. He lifted the huge beast by simply holding it by its horns. Justin was stunned. The guy then hurled the monster at them, screaming that it wasn't easy to kill. As it collided with the rock, there was a massive explosion. Justin braced himself for the impact. Someone called out for the captain. It was Tao. Half of his body was crushed and he was begging for help. They were surprised to see him. Justin decided that that was the end of it. He advised the others that if they didn't want to die, they should focus on killing the boss. He pointed his sword at Tao. Tao begged him not to, but he used his flesh-ripping arrow ability. Tao's cheeks swelled, and he exploded under the monster, causing it to roar loudly. The monster rose up. Justin ordered the other two to attack. Kai covered his hand in flames and unleashed a fire vortex at him. Niaudo released electricity and electrocuted the boss monster. The one shrieked loudly. Justin saw that he was almost defeated. He smirked, thinking that he was nowhere near as strong as the legend said. It made sense to him, because if that idiot could toss him around like a rag doll, he doubted his strength. He lunges forward with his huge sword. The monster withstood the attack of fire and lightning. It stood on two legs. Justin was stunned. The flames and lightning connected with the horn. You turned pale when she realized that he had just absorbed their energy. She told them to stop using elemental attacks because the more they hit him, the stronger he got. Justin realized they couldn't win because he was too strong. He noticed something in front of him. His eyebrows furrowed in a frown. Then he hit Kai from behind. Kai was surprised. He collapsed on the ground. You couldn't believe Justin. But Justin aimed at her next, and she collapsed too. Justin told them that they were just getting in the way underfoot, so let them do some good before they died. That they, on the contrary, should be grateful. Then he ran off. The boss monster approached the fallen people. He lifted his foot and crushed Kai to death. He was about to do the same to Yao. But something moved very fast. It was none other than Zhou. He ran up so fast and grabbed Yao. The girl immediately asked why he only saved her. The guy stared at her sadly. He then replied that back then, she was the only one who didn't bully him and let him carry her backpack. Yi had an idea that because of his weakness in his past life, people had treated him like cannon fodder without a second thought. And now as a cockroach, he was weak again. So he decided to give way and die for the sake of the bigger cockroaches. He also didn't provoke anyone, and yet he was betrayed. He had learned that in this world, only the strong had the right to control his fate. Therefore, he was determined to become stronger. Someone called out to him and asked for help. It was Justin. The monster crushed the bastard with his foot. Judgy immediately reminded him of his own words, that no monster should be touched by him. Then he smirked at him. He was furious, and just like that, he was crushed. GH turned his attention to Yao. He used soporific pollen. Soporific flower pollen causes unconsciousness when inhaled in large quantities. He knew it was best to keep his monstrous abilities to himself for now, so it was just him and the boss monster. He came face to face with him. Our guy at this moment was just showing off his aura and announced that he was using it as a stepping stone to power. The monster prepared to attack. GH immediately stuck out his tongue until he grabbed onto a branch. His shooting tongue ability activated, and he was able to pull himself up to dodge the fleeing monster. By this point, he had absorbed so many abilities and knew it was time to use them. He activated the Rain Mantis Scythe. The forelimbs of the Rain Mantis were capable of cutting through prey with ease. A few rocks cracked, but when he tried to cut the monster, it was too hard. Even after reinforcing his scythe, cutting through the boss would not be easy, but even if its outer shell turned into armor, the monster itself would still be inside. The guy saw the belly that looked like a weak spot and pierced it, followed by a quick rush of blood. The monsters roared loudly. GH gained confidence that this might work, but the monster stared at him. He turned around and threw him into the air. Bleeding GH bounced off the ground into the forest and ended up crashing into a mountain. He coughed up blood. The guy realized that despite its large size, the monster was fast. The boss immediately released electricity through his horns and tried to hit him with it. The discharge came to where he was, blinding the GG before it struck. It was so powerful, it covered a wide area. Smoke enveloped the forest. When the smoke cleared, it appeared that a tree had been broken. The monster was surprised by what he saw. GH's hands became wooden. He activated the skill Leather of Trent. Wooden skin is very resistant to electricity, but extremely weak to fire. And just as Yi thought, no matter how strong a monster was, there would always be something in his surroundings that could resist it. He knew that even though it could block attacks, he would still need a finishing blow. The boy was determined to make his move. He activated his long arms to grab Justin's sword. GG knew that the next strike would decide everything, so he raised his foot. And as he stomped on the ground, he activated the Trent Vines. It's a weapon that Trents use to catch their prey. And when they move in groups, they release countless vines, and these vines can catch any creature in the jungle. The monster roared loudly as the vines covered its body. Zhou Yi flew up and was ready to attack. He put all his strength into this move. But the boss monster was also determined to survive. It had broken free from the vines, and he couldn't believe it. He didn't have time to dodge. He activated his elastic muscles and strengthened them. The sword collided with the monster's horn and broke. The guy had to retreat. After seeing the condition of the sword, he decided to throw it away. And then he started watching the monster and saw it running towards him. The guy was sure that the battle would end as he had gained an ability that would bring him down. He absorbed a rock. It was the sharp horn of the beast. The guy activated it and his entire body transformed. He was covered in armor and both of his arms had large spiked blades. He moved quickly. The monster met him head on. As soon as they collided, a blinding light flashed. It flickered a little more, and then it stopped, leaving GH breathing heavily. They had destroyed a good portion of the forest. Joe was bleeding, but he had successfully defeated the monster. Suddenly a key appeared. It was the key to the secret realm. Using this item for a limited time gave access to the secret realm. Gigi had no idea what the secret realm was. Meanwhile, beyond the abyss, a training accident was reported. There were 3 dead, 1 seriously injured and unconscious, and 1 with minor injuries. Medics were called. A man grabbed someone by the collar. The officer angrily ordered E to tell what had happened in the abyss. He questioned why he was the one left alive. Joe didn't know what to say. He thought about just saying he was lucky, but realized that would be too fake. Someone patted the officer on the shoulder. It was Corey, and he pronounced that the military seemed to be suspicious of his vice captain's recruit. He added that if that was the case, it was like saying he was behind the whole disaster, and was surprised to hear it from him. The officer was embarrassed and tried to explain that it was just that all the victims were new recruits selected by the military, so it seemed natural. Corey looked at E, and then told the officer that that was enough since no one enters the dungeon expecting 0 casualties. Yi reassured the officer. He then released Zhou Yi, who didn't utter a single word. Later, he went up to the roof and relaxed there. The guy wondered if the captain had intentionally covered for him just because the vice captain had recommended him. He knew there was no point in thinking too much about it. What mattered to him was learning about the secret realm. The cockroach god appeared and explained that it was a hidden dimension within the abyss, and he could only enter it by using the key in his hand. So technically, it's not something people can normally get. But since his DNA is almost identical to that of the monster, the abyss categorized his battle with the monster boss as a territorial battle between monsters. That's why he got it. Joe concluded that this was an exclusive dungeon for him to become stronger. The roach god answered in the affirmative, but emphasized that the monsters inside were much deadlier than the ones he had faced so far. In other words, he would have to deal with the entity that originally granted the horned beast this key. He stated that it could be something like that mushroom monster from the past, because it was one of the intelligent beings guarding the major secrets of the abyss. Joe asked about the purpose of the countdown. The god replied that if he didn't use the key within 24 hours, it would disappear, and asked him if he would go. Joe looked at the key and said yes. But before he did, he had some things to take care of, because he might not come back and things would be left unfinished. The scene changed to a corridor of rooms and doors, and he was on his knees outside asking Eileen out. Eileen kicked him, and the guy flew off, almost with his jaw broken. She was furious because the GH dared to mess with her like that. The girl was ready to hit him again if he said that again. But the guy seriously asked her out again, and she responded with a fist. The girl punched him left and right. Blood flew all over the room. Even on her hand, a big clot of blood was left. She challenged him to say it again. Even with swollen cheeks and black eyes, he said it again. She pouted her lips when she saw the look in his eyes. She knew that look, the same one that soldiers have before their last mission, trying to fulfill their last wish before they die. Then the girl laughed out loud. She noticed that he had courage and agreed to go. Anyway, first our guy and Eileen went to a cafe, and the kid had already ordered them a drink. They drank from 1 glass with 2 straws. Watched a horror movie. Joe clung to her as he was frightened. The scene changed, the shutter clicked, and they took a couple groovy selfies. Then they bicycled along the beach at sunset. Joe was happy with his first date. He had been planning it for almost 20 years. He stated that every little detail was perfect, except that he had never had a girl to ask out. But now he could die with no regrets. The girl was watching him. Finally, she stopped pedaling and called out to him. Eileen told him that she had seen many faces of soldiers before they died. And no matter how many last wishes they grant, nothing compares to staying alive. She admits that she may not know what happened to him in the abyss or what's in his head, but she told him that instead of planning how to die with no regrets, he should live, so that way he could really have the life he wanted. Joe was stunned by her words. He remained silent, and only his reflection moved in the water. After a few moments, he responded by saying thank you. They moved on, and the girl hoped that next time he would have the courage to ask her out again. It was already nightfall, and the cockroach god was greatly surprised that the only thing Gigi wanted was a date. The guy pulled out a key. Suddenly, it cracked right in Gigi's hands. A portal began to form. It opened right in front of the protagonist. Entering it, he knew the cockroach wouldn't understand him, but it was his own way of closing a chapter of his past life. And with those thoughts, he disappeared completely. The portal had closed. He had arrived in a secret realm, the forest of the dark tree, but the guy was very surprised to see the snake-tailed monkey again. It was the same species as earlier at the training ground, except its danger level was definitely higher. The previous one would have run away, but now it was different and activated his sharp horn of a heavy-horned beast. He lunged forward sharply, but he still looked like a bug compared to the huge monster. With quick movements, he slashed his arm, and blood flowed. He aimed for its scruff, but another monster came from behind and grabbed his leg. He was thrown and crashed into a tree. The main character's lungs are having a hard time. Immediately, all the other monsters around rushed at him, and then one monster grabbed him with both hands and ripped him in half. His upper body separated from his lower body. Then he fell on a tree branch and was breathing heavily. He activated the sleeping pollen, and smoke enveloped the branch he landed on. He then began to regrow parts of his body. The immortality skill was activated. He noticed that the monkeys were only slightly weaker than the heavy-horned jungle beast, but there were too many of them. Without immortality, he would be finished. He realized that he wouldn't be able to defeat them head-on. Then he realized that the environment of the secret realm was like an abyss, which means there must be predators that prey on these apes. He thought about how the monkey had been overpowered earlier. The pollen scattered and the monkey saw him on a branch. Gigi planned to lure the monkeys into their predator's territory, so he activated the frog's jump. He jumped to the next branch, thinking he still had a chance. The monkeys roared loudly and chased after him, and so it went on for a long time, until one monkey grabbed his leg. But he aimed at it, and using the acrid slime to break free of its grip, suddenly the guy saw something. He found what he was looking for. It was those spiders. They were called giant hunter spiders, and their class was guardian. The main character changed shape. He became bird-like. Then he activated the feather of a white-tailed partridge, right in front of the spiders, and the spider immediately spotted him. He flew to a branch above those webs. He had to disguise himself as a natural predator of the spiders so they wouldn't attack him. He felt lucky to have absorbed a lot of abilities from past corpses, and now it was paying off. Then he noticed something. The monster monkeys that had been chasing him became confused, and the spiders slowly crawled off the branches. The monkeys roared loudly as they began to eat them. The spider stretched out its legs and pierced the monkey's skin. The monkey was in agony. It was foaming at the mouth. At this time, the GH stood in the shadows and watched the snake-tailed monkeys being overpowered by their natural predator. But he knows that huntsman spiders usually hunt by trapping lone prey. But he turns back and sees that at this moment a whole troop of monkeys had just invaded their territory. The spiders hissed. There was a rumble, a massacre between monkeys and spiders, and that's exactly the kind of chaos Joe needed. He activated the mantis scythe. 2 spiders pounced on the monkey, and Yi was closing in on them. He struck the spider first, and then split the monkey in 2. The guy chopped down the spiders and even leveled the odds for the weaker side to make the battle last longer. He bit into the monkey's finger and swallowed its flesh. GH took the chance to absorb the abilities. But nothing happened to his body. He asked why it wasn't working. The cockroach god called him an idiot. He told him that you can't just bite a random monster and expect to become stronger. He needed to devour certain parts of his enemies to gain stronger abilities. He offered him his help as a spotter and illuminated them. The screen showed him that the ability was in the biceps of a giant ape. He bit into it. Then he acquired a new ability called Long Snake Monkey Hands, an enhancement for giant snake monkey hands. Now the guy was watching the chaos. In the chaotic battlefield, he knew he would have plenty of time to keep evolving. He also acquired the stamina enhancement and the poisonous spider sting. He also gained paralytic poison. He chopped up several monkeys at the same time. By the time he finished, dusk had fallen. The guy arrived at a certain place. The door was made of stone and was fiery red. And behind that door was the boss's territory. GG felt an aura coming from inside, and it was insanely strong. Suddenly, he noticed something. Something was folded up on the side. He asked what it was. Then he picked up an orange orb. The god told him that it was a secret realm orb that could be found in monster graveyards unique to secret realms. It is an ultra-rare magic crystal. Over the years, it has absorbed the residual energy of countless dead monsters. It contains an enormous amount of energy. Roach informed Yi that he could absorb it all at once or use half of its power to break the rift and safely leave the secret realm. He pondered and thought about the options. To play it safe or risk everything for more power. But he knew this was his best chance for evolution. And if he backed out now, he knew he might not get another opportunity like this. He hadn't faced the boss yet, so there was no question of running away already. When he entered, he saw a room surrounded by fire, and in front of him, the boss monster was sitting on a throne. His name was the Heavy-Horned Beastman. The level of danger was unknown. He was surprised that he couldn't see him. But even from this distance, he could feel a terrifying pressure. This was indeed the boss of the secret realm. The one spoke up to ask him if he was the one who exterminated his kin. The guy was shocked. The monster was speaking again. He realized that the kin he was talking about was the heavy-horned beast from the abyss. He wondered if these monsters had a human-like society. Then in an instant, the boss monster lunged at him, and the ground split open. Flames erupted. The boss monster knew it had missed its target. He also finds our GH strange. It was because our guy had already transformed and activated the arm of the giant snake ape. The monster knew that the connection to this world hadn't even opened yet. He asked how a person like him was able to get here. Joe was shocked to learn that the man was trying to connect the secret realm to Earth. And he didn't want to think anymore. So he just let this monster boss speak. The one looked at him angrily. And in the blink of an eye, he punched him. Joe's eyes rolled back as he coughed up blood. And he crashed into a pillar. The impact was so hard that it left a dent in it. His torso was severed. And the system immediately started the regeneration process. The boss monster noticed him. When he saw the regeneration rate, he said that Yi was more like them, and found it very interesting. He decided to dissect it and study it. As he was about to strike again, his dynamic vision was activated and his perception of high-speed targets was heightened. He saw a stake approaching. Although the strength of this monster boss was terrifying, he could tell that its attacks were really simple. He dodged the attack. The stake was now in the ground, and ran to hit it. The convergence would give him an advantage. The guy activated the caustic slime. After all, he wanted to get the boss monster ability. But before he could reach it, it had already kicked him away. The boss monster admits that the spear was awkward to use, and he prefers to strike with his fists, and was on the ground, and the one was hitting him relentlessly. Dust covered everything around him. Eventually he stopped, and the dust cleared. The protagonist looked very bad, but the monster was very surprised, for the kid was alive, and was thankful to God that the elastic muscles had absorbed most of the blows. Now the monster stood over him and said he was bored. He planned to pierce him with a spear covered in fire, and struck very quickly. But Joe managed to block it with his forearms. The hardened skin has been activated. It is the tough skin from the back armor of a heavy-horned jungle beast. It can self-heal and provides extreme protection. The monster tried to attack again, but Yi was able to repel the blow with just his body. The cockroach god appeared and declared that the hardened skin was melting from fire. They could still use the secret realm stone to retreat, but Yi refused to believe that he had lost. He saw the gap and immediately jumped. He then activated the giant ape's arm fist. The boss monster twirled his spear in the air, and the movement threw GH backwards. He crashed into a pillar. Flames shot up and spread everywhere, controlled by the boss monster. The monster stared at E and unleashed a huge wave of flames at him. Our guy saw it coming and jumped to dodge it, but the flames pursued him. He activated a frog jump to dodge the flames, but he couldn't dodge at all, and his thigh was pierced. The immortality skill activated, but the wound took permanent damage, disabling recovery. He turned pale as he realized that immortality's insane regeneration wouldn't work. The boss monster told him it would melt him. He faced the flames and screamed that he would take the boss with him. The guy activated the heavy-horned beast's spear. He then lunged at him. Gigi was screaming and angry. He had one goal: to kill the monster. He aimed for the horn, and he even managed to hit it. But the monster just stared at him. Joe was surprised. His blade stuck as the monster gathered flames in his spear. The guy was engulfed in flames. This was followed by his loud scream. His body was burning, and there was almost nothing left. Even when he fell to the ground, his body continued to burn. The cockroach god told him that this was not a monster he could defeat. He doesn't want the one to throw his life away. He forcibly used the secret realm stone to open a portal for an emergency escape. But to his surprise, Yi kicked it away. The stone fell and shattered. The god was annoyed. Joe was determined, expressing that he had long since resigned himself to death. The cockroach god was at a loss for words. Suddenly, a red aura burst out from the broken sphere. A red mist enveloped Yi. Guy ordered the monster boss to surround him. Its body glowed yellow. He then moved with lightning speed. The boss monster was confused by what had happened. He could feel the power surging out of him like a tidal wave. The system screen confirmed that Yi had not escaped from certain death. Thus, he had passed the second test of the cockroach god. The battle form is unlocked. He exuded a powerful wind from his body as he transformed. The guy examined his arm. His whole body was covered in muscles with hard armor-like stones on some parts, such as his chest, genitals, and shin. He could feel a new power flowing through his body. He asked what kind of battle form it was. The cockroach god replied that it was a state that allowed his abilities to develop freely. Before he could say anything, he was distracted because flames flew at him. The boss monster used his ability called explosive flow, and lava erupted. The area was filled with smoke. Fortunately, Yi was unharmed. The cockroach god said that this armor combines the shell of a cockroach, the supple skin of a mutant toad, and the hardened hide of a heavy-horned jungle beast. And as he gained new abilities, it could continue to improve. Joe was amazed that even the concentrated explosive lava flow barely scratched the outer layer. He was impressed with the biological composite armor. The monster was sure that it wouldn't survive this barrage of attacks. But Yi's hand appeared. It surprised the boss monster and struck him before he could regain his senses. He used the arm of a giant snake ape combined with elastic muscles, so that it essentially became the long-range fist of a snake ape arm. The cockroach god informed him that when in combat form, he could activate multiple abilities at once and combine them into combo skills. There is also no recovery time between changing abilities. Chu saw that the boss monster was able to attack him in a way he never expected, and in combat form, his strength, stamina, and agility increased tenfold. He felt unbelievable. The boss monster was at a loss for words because the guy didn't have a scratch on him. He couldn't believe it, so he attacked again and watched him closely and combined dynamic vision, elastic muscles, and a mantis blade. With that, he easily repelled the boss monster's spear. The guy kicked with his foot, and while the monster was in the air, with a long leg kick, GG extended his fingers and wrapped them around the boss monster's arms and legs. Then he yanked downward, sending the boss monster crashing to the ground with a mighty thud. The boss monster couldn't believe it. The monster was angry. "You bastard," punched him, but Yi met it with his fist. It seemed like they were now on equal footing. But this monster was outmatched. He ended up trembling and lying in front of the GH. The monster looked at his spear. He was struggling to reach it. He had a plan in his head that risked throwing off his progress and expansion. He pierced the ground and the lava surged outward in an attempt to regain its full strength, and was stunned. The lava spread across the floor. In the blink of an eye, Yi was surrounded by lava. The boss monster laughed at him and said that he would regret not killing him just now because it was his last chance. The guy took a fighting stance. He watched him using his vision skill. In his combat form, he could directly see the enemy's weaknesses and areas of extracted abilities. The stronger the ability, the brighter it glowed. GG prepared to move. He instantly disappeared from his seat. The monster boss wondered where he had gone. In the blink of an eye, Yi's foot was already in his face, and the guy kicked him powerfully. Boss monster crashed into the rocks. The monster was surprised at his new position, so much so that he called the protagonist a monster. His last move was a combination of a frog jump and a mantis scythe. Then our guy picked something up off the ground and ate it. The boss monster stood up again, as it had already recovered its power. He activated the molten spiral. It was a wave of lava that could burn Yi to the ground. He proclaimed his victory by unleashing a vortex of lava in Yi's direction. But Yi immediately began to emit a golden glow from his body. The lava was getting closer, but with just one swing of his blade, it dissipated. The boss monster couldn't believe it and held up a spear made from the boss monster's horn. He commented that the horn tasted like black pepper sauce, and then he exclaimed that he liked the hell out of it. Boss Monster was startled by his devilish grin. He fell on his ass and crawled away from him, calling for his mommy because there is a monster here that eats other monsters. Joe asked the boss monster if it could withstand its own ultimatum. The system revealed that the heavy horn beast's sharp horn ability had been upgraded to the sharp horn beastman heavy horn. It had also obtained the molten attribute and used the skill heaven spawning molten spiral. The boss monster begged him not to do that. But that didn't stop Yi. It caused the boss monster to scream loudly. He continued to scream as the lava enveloped him, and there was nothing left of his body. Smoke covered the area and stood in the center of it. Then an oblong sphere appeared with a monster inside. The boy was very surprised and asked what it was. The cockroach god informed him that it was a monster seal, a rare item that only falls from monsters of the Lord class of the secret realm. Using it unlocks the monster record for the Imperial Iron Guard, allowing one to transform into that monster, and realized that Fatty would be of use now. He poked at the sphere, and it shattered. Then the screen showed that Fatty had gotten a record of the heavy horn beastman, and it was prompted to summon an Imperial Iron Guardian. He answered yes. Fatty walked out of the screen, started transforming immediately. It looked like the boss monster they had seen earlier. Fatty was confused as to why Yi looked smaller. Joe was amazed at what he saw. It was pretty damn cool. Fatty then knelt down in front of him, and a screen appeared above him. It showed his race, heavy horn class Guardian Beastman. Even Fatty couldn't believe that this was his new form. He commented that it was ugly. The cockroach god replied that the transformation wasn't just external, because his Fatty's strength would also grow along with Yi's strength. Suddenly something cracked. It was the pillar behind them. It was falling towards them. Fatty gathered his strength. Why effortlessly stopped the column without letting it crush them. Then he put it aside. He cried because it was now huge and no longer fit in the door, which made him think he was already useless. Joe tapped him and told him to pull himself together. He was expected to evolve being around him, so he wanted to see what he could do. With that, Fatty raised his hand and summoned a spear. He then attacked. The same attack that had thrown him off a while ago was blocked simply by his forearms. Our fellow Fatty didn't hold back either, as his spear released lava after contact. Joe came out of that unharmed with steam on his body. He was surprised because even the boss's fire attacks didn't do that much damage. The god declared that Fatty didn't need to waste energy to maintain the secret realm, so he was currently at 100% Lord State. He was pleased with how strong the Imperial Iron Guardian really was. The protagonist ordered Fatty to return, and was pleased that his strongest current ability, the sharp horn of the heavy horn beast, had evolved again and now carried the attribute of moltenness. On top of that, Fatty can transform into a heavy horn beastman and can now fight head-on. This would be his trump card up his sleeve. He has risked his life to do his best, and now he faces a qualifier. He believes that with the abilities he has acquired, he can handle any challenge that is thrown at him. He will be in the fighter squad. 3 days later, we finally saw the tournament arena. Someone entered the arena. There were so many people inside, and of course, our boy was among them. As the crowd cheered from the stands, he was stunned by how many people were there. There were a lot of people in the auditorium too, and he heard someone say that the fighter squad qualifier was the most important event in the city of Nurai. It wasn't just a recruitment of new members for the squad, but also a political battleground for the battle for power in Nurai. Eileen and Corey watched through the glass window. Eileen announced that each of the major families had sent a representative, and the winner of the tournament determines which family controls the power in the city for the next 4 years. Several men dressed in black walk past Yi. He notices them. The guy with the eye patch is Bai Haoyi. The Bai family controls the Nurai City Intelligence Bureau, and those competing with him are all elite operatives. Another strong candidate is Tony Olaf, who represents the military. He is the favorite to win this year's tournament. The military plans to turn the fighter squad into an auxiliary department, giving them full control over the military forces of Nurai. Hoy and Tony meet, and Tony tells him that the tournament will decide whether the Olaf family secures their 4th term in power. The stakes are high. Hoy simply replied that the Bai family will continue to support the Olaf family as usual. Suddenly, the crowd became excited. A woman walked in. She is a saint of the Church of Espers, Karen User, and this is her first public appearance. There was information that Karen's ability is a kind of hypnosis or mind control. That's why her followers wear blindfolds to avoid eye contact with her. There was a group of strange people standing nearby. They looked more like monsters with bound torsos and arms in strange poses, and was in shock. Eileen recognized that for the moment the church was benefiting them. The outlying regions rely on their influence for stability, and they also need their research to better understand the espers. Even Tony and Howie were watching Karen. Hoy didn't expect the church to actually send their saint to participate. Tony told him not to worry about her because she wasn't their target. Howie put on a white robe and said the guy in the uniform and glasses is the one they should focus on. This is the representative of the Zhang family, Zhang Jie. Upon closer inspection, Ji looked depressed. Tony asked him if the Zhang family could have sent someone else, and ended up sending a useless young gentleman. There was a frightening aura emanating from him, and he offered Jai a deal. If he would withdraw now and surrender, they would keep their seat in the parliament. Ji replied that even if they were stripped of their seats, they would never become the hand-dogs of the military. There will only be 3 major families left in Middle Aya City, said the military. Just by observing them from afar, Yi could tell that their relationship looked strained. Eileen said that the Zhang family ran the Research Institute of Esper Technology, and they were allies of the fighter squad. The guy next to her said that Jie is the weakest of the 4 warriors, and the military is going to take over the Zhang family's seat and expand their influence in the parliament. She told Yi through the microphone that the captain hoped he would place high in the tournament so that they would have a chance to protect the Zhang family. The guy replied that he would do his best. She then took out her earpiece and asked the commander if he really believed in Yi. Deep down, she knew that if the military gained full control of the parliament, they would be in trouble. The commander replied that he had saved Yao, coming back alive from the abyss. It just showed he had some skills. Fireworks were lit. The crowd cheered as they looked to the center of the arena, as vines crawled across the ground, and a flower bloomed, revealing Haley Carmen. Haley introduced herself as the first-round examiner. She explained that the tournament consists of 3 rounds of evaluation. The first is called extreme climbing. It is followed by a mountain trail with 100 stone steps. Reaching just the 10th step is considered a pass. But judging from past results, 2/3 of the examinees will die on the climb. The examiners' jaws dropped open in shock. Haley assured them that Squad 10 would ensure their safety, but they were still advised to proceed with caution. She announced the first round of the exam, and it was starting right now. Many of the examinees hesitated. One man forced himself despite the frightening feeling. The guy ran to climb, saying there was nothing difficult about the climb. The others were inspired and followed him. They ran forward with some people standing behind them. Among those who took their time were Karen and Ji, as well as Hao Yu and Tony. He commented that they were a bunch of fools rushing forward when they didn't even know how they were going to die. Brave looked at the elite of the 4 families huddled together like trembling puppies. He declared that he would be the winner of this round. He continued to climb. Then his surroundings changed. It surprised him. They had been transported into the city. They were confused, but they were actually still there, on the steps, and they were acting like zombies. The guy was shocked and asked why they were so frozen. Haley knew the ordeal was more than just a physical climb. The 100 steps were built from the bones of a Ghost King-class monster. It was one of the strongest creatures ever defeated by mankind. Even as bones, it could trap anyone into an illusion, preventing them from reaching the top. And if they don't find a way out of the illusion soon, the examiners saw that they were being devoured by monsters. And so they met their imminent death on the steps. Haley announced that these examiners had been eliminated. She used the halo of resurrection on them. Guy was surprised that all these players were dead. Eileen put the earpiece back on and explained that each illusion had a different purpose. Whether it's surviving the timer, reaching a location, or defeating a certain monster. Once he fulfills the condition, he can get out of the illusion. She won't be able to contact him, so he will have to rely on his own judgment. Tony tells his squad to remember their mission, to be the one to rise above the rest. Synchronously, they stepped onto the first step. Tony prepared himself. He was transported to the mountain of fire, and a timer appeared. The sun swirled, and it formed a dragon. The boy watched it completely calmly. He realized that the illusion was designed specifically to counter his abilities. But Tony took it lightly, as his task was simply to last 5 minutes. The squad was with him, and they proceeded with plan number 1. They let the water out of their hands. While the others acted as firefighters, Tony stood there with his hand raised. Then he snapped his fingers. A chunk of ice burst out of the ground and pierced the dragon, and it disappeared. The military team was able to continue. Eileen's ally became more alert as well. He commented that the military was really throwing everything they could to win this year. Eileen wondered how the commander was still so calm. He told her that she shouldn't be nervous yet, and then told them that the first 10 steps were only for screening out newcomers who weren't suitable for the fighter squad. So it's barely a warm-up for these elite candidates. But the higher they climb, the more difficult the illusions become. Eventually, they'll run out of subordinates to sacrifice, and that's when the real confrontation begins. He stated that to reach the top, they need someone who can overpower 100, very strong. Or they need a mindset that calmly adapts to whatever is thrown at them. The spectators noticed that there was still someone in the starting area. They wondered if he had chickened out and given up. They talked about E, who stood with his eyes closed and tuned out, and then opened them with confidence. And he began to climb the stairs. The first illusion was created. He was slipping down an icy cliff and was falling inside the ice doctrine. He took out his spear, pointed it at the ice, and plunged it into the side of the cliff. Then he felt something. A blue bird with a big mouth appeared. He was in a desperate situation as he was on a frictionless cliff where it was impossible to stand up. And now the flying monster was attacking him from above. A system screen appeared, and he clicked on the attack, then on the poisonous sting, then the sticky tongue flick. He used the whole combo and got the sting whip. The guy absorbs the lightning from the bird and fended off the attack. The whip glowed blue as the attack hit the bird, severely injuring it, and it fell to the bottom of the cliff. GH found that very easy. He was able to keep climbing and thought about how these illusory monsters look intimidating, but their strength is on the level of the rank and file from the Silent Shadow jungle. He remembered the information from Eileen, which mentioned that at the peak, the monsters reached the Guardian class. The boy was confident that at his current level, he could handle them. He took another step, and then another. The illusion began again. This time it was a maze. Illusions built this way are always the most difficult, with completely unpredictable terrain. If one encountered an enemy that countered his powers, he would probably get stuck. But that didn't really bother our GH, as he used the lava spear ability to burn a large area. This cleared his path. And with that, he immediately saw a way out. The guy was confident, as his abilities could adapt to any environment. He carried straight ahead. The man next to him thought he was showing off because he started last on purpose, acting like the protagonist. He only had 2 steps to go, but the guy stepped again, and then ran forward. They were shocked. One person even commented that he was a beast. Another man begged Yi to take him too. It was the one who called Yi a show-off. The other 2, upon hearing this, cast a sharp glare at him. They took out their anger on him for saying that, and now they think they lost their chance to be dragged through. Corey commented that Yi was faster than he expected. At that speed, he could actually make it to the top. Eileen seemed troubled by this, because not too long ago she saw him as an ignorant, thick-skinned rookie, and now he was striving for something even the commander couldn't achieve. She remembered all the times he had shown himself to be very heroic, and now he was like a bright and pure ray of light under a clear sky. Scene changed. The 4 from the elite companies were up front. Haley announced that Hao Yu had finished the course with a score of 38 steps. Karen had completed 35 steps, and the current highest score was 40 steps, and that was Tony. He looked over and saw that G was panting. He was frustrated and breathing heavily. His henchmen had already been eliminated. Now he was alone. He was depressed because he had only reached the 31st step, and he was still 9 short of their family's highest record. The boy wondered if this was how it would end. Just as suddenly he was approached. It was Tony, who ordered him to bark like a dog 10 times and back down, and then their family could keep 1 seat in Parliament. He offered him to make just 1 sacrifice. The kid was in tears. He cried, biting his lip to keep from making a sound, until he heard something. The GH called out and caught up with them. This surprised Tony, especially because E was alone, unlike them who had subordinates for sacrifices. The military man asked who it was in front of him. The protagonist continued to climb. G was impressed by his strength and thought that if they knew someone like that in Niraya City, they would beg him to represent them instead. Through the earpiece, Eileen told him to help So, but our guy kept walking. It made her wonder if he could hear her. One of Tony's subordinates was impressed and told him that he was very lucky to train them and keep them on the defensive for moments like this. Tony told them to follow him as they went up a few more levels. He was aiming to break his family's record of 50 steps. Eventually, the last 2 subordinates fell. He knew he was acting recklessly, but he was making rapid progress. He then wondered where the kid had gone. To his surprise, Yi was already right behind him. Shock made his face ugly. Yi then walked past him and said that second place was all for Tony, who was standing there with his face twisted with anger. The guy then abruptly turned around and asked him why he stopped chasing him. He teased him by saying that a real man doesn't give up so easily. This infuriated Tony even more. At noon, Haley announced that E was now in the lead with 60 steps. He then reached 82 steps. He is now on the 99th step. At this point, he's equaled the highest commander's record. One more and he will reach the top. At the same time, the crowd came in excitement as they would witness history. One examinee cried that he had lost all his money, for he had bet on Tony. The casino boss recognized E. He remembered how the guy had bet all his organs on his victory. And seeing the progress of the protagonist, the boss realized he was broke. Before taking the last step, the protagonist had something to say. He arrogantly asked if this was all there was. Suddenly, he heard a static noise coming from his earpiece. Eileen yelled at him to stop showing off. She was angry because she told him to help Jai, and he ignored her. To this, GH said with a strange face that he would complete the mission as promised. He moved, but he was running downhill. Everyone was confused as to what he was doing. He had to go back down the safe path to avoid more illusions. Tony saw him coming. The guy teased him, asking why he wasn't on step 50 yet. Tony got angry. He felt like the guy had come back to humiliate him. Finally, the guy stopped in front of Sei. He towered over him. Sei was confused as to what was going on. He was surprised when he was picked up, and then and quickly thrown over his shoulder. Tony couldn't believe that Yi was going to drag a dead weight up. Plus, he was going alone in an illusion of difficulty for two. In a flash, the illusion began. Lava filled everything around them. They would have burned if it wasn't for the barrier Yi put up. They passed it and got another illusion. This time they were fighting monsters in the forest. Gigi carried GA as they flew by on a liana without touching the ground. The next illusion that followed was at sea. Sea monsters were trying to eat them. He turned into a bird and asked him to avoid being eaten. He thought to help in any way he could, just to avoid being a burden. But Yi reacts incredibly fast, so before he could adjust to the dizziness of entering the illusion, he was already on the move. And that's when he realized that the best thing he could do was to shut up and hold himself up as befitting an accessory to be useful to him. The sun was high in the sky. They landed on another stage. By now, the kid was breathing heavily. He had reached the 50th step and told him that as long as he was one step above Tony, he would be safe. Sei cried at such mercy, and he bowed to him, feeling deeply grateful. He told him that he was the Zhang family's benefactor from now on. Tony shouted at him. GH noticed his rage. Tony asked Yi if he even realized what he was doing. He asked him if he really wanted to ruin the Olaf family's 4-year plan. He tried to threaten him that if he contacted the Olaf family, he'd be finished. The protagonist didn't care. He remembered what Justin had done to him and how he was accosted by a military officer. One had planted explosives on him, the other a stupid, cowardly bastard. It made him think that these people were so used to being tyrants that they thought everyone just bowed down to them. He wondered how they managed not to make enemies everywhere. He called Jai and asked him if he wanted him to help him blow off some steam. Jai enthusiastically gave him a thumbs up and said he would just add that to the reward. And immediately he moved. Tony was shocked. There was a boot in front of his face. In the blink of an eye, Yi kicked him. Tony lost a tooth. As he fell down, he thought about the fact that even the fighter squad leader didn't dare to openly cross them. So he wondered who the hell Yi thought he was. He collapsed at the foot of the stairs. Someone was watching through the screen. They were watching him fall. Immediately, the man on the couch stood up. He ordered Genting to give a full report on Yi by nightfall. Bai Genting replied to the chairman that he understood everything. He is the head of the Nirai City Intelligence Bureau and the current patriarch of the Bai family. The chairman, Rhodes Olaf, replied that whoever he is, if he dares to mess with him, he will pay the price. He is the chairman of the town and the patriarch of the Olaf family. The scene changed to sunset, into a small back alley. GH came home and rested. He was eating potato chips on the couch with his leg up on the coffee table. The first round of the qualifying tournament had ended 2 days ago, and everyone was shocked that Tony, the match leader, had only placed third. Although Yi admits that one was impressive. After dropping him down the mountain, the latter climbed back up alone and collapsed on the 49th step. Before the match began, Yi bet all the magic crystals he had brought from the abyss, plus his organs, and won big at odds of 1,000 to 1. The casino boss thanked him for sparing his life. That casino boss had to sell everything he had to pay him the promised 50 gold coins. In that world, one gold coin was worth like 100,000 yuan before the disaster. According to Eileen, 50 gold coins is roughly what she earns in an entire year of monster hunting. That meant Yi had made a fortune. As for the reward for helping the young master of the Zhang family, his deep thoughts were interrupted when someone broke through the door. He was surprised. Eileen kicked his door with her foot. He immediately stood up and greeted her. She couldn't believe that he gave up the Zhang family's 3-story villa to stay in a rundown apartment. She asked if he was a fool. En was shocked. He replied that it's close to the Slayer Squad's residential tower, so it's safer. Eileen's house is in the Slayer Squad's residential tower. She then told him not to waste money, that every coin should be spent on getting stronger. She told him there was an auction that night, and he should go to it to broaden his horizons a little. He received an invitation. The night came. They walked down the streets, and he kept looking around. A mouse squeaked and he got scared. He asked if it was legal. Eileen replied that the things sold there are not allowed on the open market, but are in high demand. That's why it's called the black market, and was surprised. She knew it was illegal, but that doesn't stop her. Instead, she's participating in it herself. It was late at night. Eileen knocked on the back door. She knocked 3 times and waited for something to happen. The door opened. She told him to stay close. They went inside. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. Then the light came on and was blinded by the sudden light. And when he opened his eyes, he saw the men in black cloaks pointing guns at them, and they were surrounded. One man took off his hood and asked for their invitation. Eileen gave it to him. He took it quickly. The man examined it and told them to follow him. They went through another door, and when they entered, it was the auction room. There were already people sitting in the seats. GH noticed that there were a lot of people. The guy tried to make himself comfortable and asked the girl if the place was legal. She replied that with the support of the Bai family, even if it wasn't, it would be considered as such. Besides, ordinary people can't even get in here. The scene has moved to the 2nd floor, and there is the Olaf family's private box. The man sitting on the couch in the uniform is the Olaf agent, Hart. One of his guards noticed something. He reports to his boss that Eileen from the fighter squad is sitting in seat 17 along with E. Hart saw them. A devilish grin appeared on his face as he commented that it was indeed a small world. A few moments later, the presenter greeted them. The presenter was dressed in a sexy bunny costume. She told them that there would be over 100 rare treasures that night, so their visit would be worth it. Their first item was a mermaid's tail. It was an extremely rare part of the monster that was edible to ordinary humans. It was known for its powerful rejuvenating effects and how difficult it was to obtain. The starting price was 1 gold coin. The crowd became excited. They had acted wisely by starting with the premium item. The item was so rare that it could save someone's grandfather. The cockroach god told him that its grade was F. He realized that it was just a trash ability. Why were people fighting over it? Eileen pointed out that it prolongs life. She thought he was an idiot for not realizing that. The next lots were those that hadn't sold in previous auctions, and they were offered at an additional discount starting at 100 copper coins. The onlookers knew they were being scammed because it was just useless junk. They were smart enough to know that not every monster corpse was valuable, and this was just presented to bait inexperienced newcomers. The roach god discovered these corpses and estimated that their ability classes were E, A, C, D, and A. The little guy smiled. He raised his hand and shouted that he wanted them all. The auctioneer was pleased. She was glad they had found suckers and was willing to spend some money this night. Eileen had just proved he was dumb. Next up was one of the most anticipated lots of the evening. It's from the Ice Plateau Abyss C rank. This is what Eileen wants. It is a magical crystal from the Lord of the Ice Plateau, the Frost-Fanged Spider of the Plateau. The purity of the crystal is over 50%. It is perfectly intact and of the highest quality. It is perfect for any awakened ice type. Bidding starts at 1 gold coin. Eileen was determined to get her hands on it, especially because of what happened to the evolved mushroom monster. Once her Snowfang blades obtained the ice infinity, they would become much stronger. She didn't want to suffer humiliation again. The girl must become stronger. Eileen raised her number. The auctioneer confirmed her bid, then asked if there were any other bids. Someone pressed a button and announced that the number 1 spot bid 10 gold coins. It was from the honored guest seat on the 2nd floor. She told them that each increase in the bet would now be 1 coin higher. Hart now recognized the item Eileen was after, and it was exactly what young Mr. Tony had asked them for. Eileen looked at them angrily. Now that the Olaf family is also bidding, things have gotten more complicated. She bid 11 gold pieces. The number one spot bid 15 gold. She raised her bid to 20 gold, but seat number one bids 25 gold. The audience thinks she's crazy for bidding against the Olaf family. They recognized her as a member of the squad. GH knew it wasn't good. Hartu grinned. She's only a vice captain. He thinks her limit is 30 gold. Eileen got angry. She bid 30 gold pieces. The auctioneer commented that the bidding war had just gotten exciting. She asked if the treasure would go to number 17. It was her entire life savings, so she prayed it would work. The auctioneer brightened. When the number one spot bid 35 gold pieces, the audience's jaws dropped. Eileen felt miserable. One of Hart's men came up to them and said he was here to deliver a message from his boss. He said with a mocking face, "Are you out of money yet? If you can't afford to gamble, don't show up. This is not a place for beggars." Hart laughed, imagining the looks on their faces after that. The auctioneer declared that this was a final warning and snatched the number out of Eileen's hand, and then slowly stood up, picked up the number and said he was bidding 50 gold. Everyone in the audience was surprised. Eileen looked at him too, with either approval or disapproval. Hart found this interesting. He said that in all his years as Agent Olaf, he'd never seen anyone dare to outbid them until the end. The bid continued to rise. Now the number one spot was betting 80 gold pieces. The auctioneer was simply shocked. She could already feel this huge sum in her hands. Chu smiled. Then he put his finger up and offered 90 gold pieces. Eileen told him that they couldn't go any higher, and planned it well since they had 80 gold. The villa was worth at least 20 gold, so he knew they could go on. He told her not to panic and to focus on getting the item. If it came to that, he would talk to Gia. At this moment, Chai stood behind him and replied that he was right because it was only a few gold coins, and told them not to worry because no matter how much they lacked, he would cover the difference. The girl was shocked. The subordinate told Hart that they couldn't continue bidding because they were already far beyond the family's budget. Yiji supported them. Gigi teased them by showing his middle finger and saying that if they couldn't play, they shouldn't come. Hart was very annoyed. The auction ended. Eileen thanked them for everything that night. She promised GH to gradually pay back what she owed him. He told her not to be so formal and reminded her that the money should be invested in her stronger self. The guy just followed her advice to the end. They were surprised when the ground shook. Say asked what was going on. Eileen received an emergency alert. All members of the fighter squad to report to respond to a level A disaster. The narration stepped back a couple minutes to the science fortress. There were so many birds flying outside the walls. A large monster appeared out of the ground. It looked like a giant worm, except it had a big mouth with sharp teeth. When its foot touched the ground, it released a powerful energy, and it continued to build up, to the point where the ground trembled, and Jai asked what was going on. At this time, Eileen received a summons. She was then ordered to gather patrol teams and escort the citizens to the nearest shelters. She was about to say something to the two men, but Yi interrupted her, saying that she didn't need to say anything more because in times like these, every unit counts. She was ready as well. She told them to follow her, and they ran. Some parts of the city were on fire. They could barely make it to the nearest shelter. The civilians were fleeing. They panicked and jostled, running for cover. A loud roar made them stop for a second. The woman pointed to the sky. Giant bugs were flying there, and they landed on the ground. They crushed some people. Seeing this, the people were seized with fear. They ran as fast as they could. A little girl stood there crying and screaming, "Mommy!" Suddenly, someone's hand reached out to her. Luckily, her mother found her. Big objects fell from the sky and exploded on the ground like bombs. They were monsters that looked like spiders, but with sharp shells, and they squeaked like mice. They attacked immediately. The man bled as they ate him. They attacked one by one. The mother hugged her child and ran, but the monster blocked her path. She froze as she saw it attacking. The girl just closed her eyes and cradled her child. Luckily, Yi arrived in time. He batted the insect away right above their heads. She saw that the creature had been cut in half, and it was Zhou Yi who had done it. He spread the flame through his hands and channeled it through his spear, which destroyed the monster. The woman behind was at a loss for words. She thanked her savior and her daughter's savior. GH turned around and noticed the commotion behind. Eileen grabbed two men by the collars at the same time. The guy recognized that these were the same guys that showed up with Tony. He couldn't believe that these awakened men were standing by, while civilians were being slaughtered by monsters and then disguised themselves as regular people to run for cover. Eileen introduced herself to them and told them that she was immediately calling them both into the reserve force to defend the city. The guy told her to take all his money and not to risk his life. He asked how they would pay him if he was injured. The other defended himself by saying it was a squad matter and had nothing to do with them. The brown-haired man then told E that since he liked to show off so much, he hoped the monsters would kill the tough guy of the year. Then he walked away. Eileen immediately released her web and wrapped it around the man. Knocking him to the ground, the guy asked what she was doing. She stepped on his cheek. She emphasized that this was a summoning, not a negotiation. She ordered them to get them out of here as fast as possible and back in, and then treat them as deserters. The man yelled no because he's an Olympic athlete and not even in the fighter squad. He yelled that she couldn't do that and pointed out that the city was crawling with monsters and he was still sucking up to 4 families. That made him unworthy of joining the squad. Eileen was ordered to help at the Scarlet Gate. There was a loud explosion at the Scarlet Gate, which they also saw live. She called E to come with her, and the guy agreed. They went on a motorcycle, and when they got to the gate, there was another explosion. The monsters were making their way inside. She told them they didn't have time to wait for reinforcements, so they were going inside. The girl stopped the bike and they got off. Then she used her web to get through the door, holding on to E while pulling herself up to the top of the building. She reached the top of the wall and saw several corpses of both humans and monsters. Hughes was upset that they were too late. He saw the monsters on the other side of the wall and wondered if it was just the 2 of them alone to destroy them all. She then decided to take another look around and abruptly spotted a cannon. She told him that if the cannon still worked, they could hold the line. The girl then ordered Gigi to hold back the monsters for 2 minutes while she cranked up the cannon. Several giant insect-like monsters flew towards them. Gigi was confused that he was now the only one here, and for 2 minutes, he had no choice but to hold his defenses. He used the roach scythe and instantly defeated a bunch of monsters. He saw a creeping monster creeping past him. He used a sticky tongue, wrapped it around the monster, and threw it as far away from the battlefield as possible. He shouted that none of them would get past him. Suddenly, the large monster roared. It caught his attention. In the blink of an eye, the monster was already clawing at him. The boy summoned his spear and sliced it in half. The boy was already panting from the difficulty of the situation. But another monster was already towering over him. He admitted to himself that he now understood why those 2 didn't dare to enter the battlefield. One wrong move against these creatures would mean death. He checked the corpse of the man beside him. The man's skin had melted away, and his muscles and teeth were visible. The guy looked even more determined now. He faced the monster and jumped to dodge its attack, and then stabbed it from above. He thought that fear should not be used as an excuse to run away, and then he took and ripped a piece of the monster's flesh out with his hands and ate it. He had gained the ability of the dragon claw grasp. His hands transformed. The monster stepped on more, and he slashed the monsters that were attacking him. Suddenly, there was a quick attack in front of him. Dust kicked up as the monster's sharp foot struck the Scarlet Gate and slowly settled down. Meanwhile, from below the wall, a creeping monster carrying its egg climbed down. Inside that egg, there were many small monsters, but even the small ones were dangerous. The monster immediately threw the egg into the air, and as it fell, it caused an explosion and released those little monsters. By this point, Yi already looked exhausted. If this continued, he knew that these monsters wouldn't stop attacking. He wondered where the 2-minute reinforcements from the captainess were, but he also knew that if he lost the wall, the city would be destroyed. A lot of people would die. The thought ran through his head, and that alone motivated him to keep fighting. He stated that from the moment he set foot on the wall, retreat was not an option for him. Zhou Yi stood up and released a flame. A horde of monsters were heading towards him. He released more flames and it enveloped his spear in a swirling motion. This ability is called Heaven-Spawning Molten Spiral, and it incinerated several monsters at once. The fire continued to burn. The night sky flickered, and the narrative now appeared in the control room of the city. One man went out of his mind when none of the defense systems were active, and the main crystal was not responding. He ordered the activation sequence to run again. They were in a bad situation where the sequence starts but the crystal doesn't respond at all. Someone volunteered to do it. He was confused as to who that person was. The staff realized it was a rookie. They knew it was G, and his entire family had developed an entire defense system. They recognized that no one knew the system better than he did, and the guy quickly got to work. Two monster-like hands appeared behind his back, and they moved too, while his other two hands were busy typing. Then he noticed something. The crystal loop was functioning, and the crystal energy amplifiers were online. In addition, the threat detection signals were stable. The crystal's hardware was fine. So he thought of one good reason. He was typing so fast that any Dota 2 gamer would be jealous. And just as he thought, there was a power interruption, which means someone used an emergency override during the system diagnostics to shut down all power output from the crystals. From watchtowers, outer defense bunkers, to energy defense cannons. And even the 3-level core powering the entire defense node, it was all shut down. He also knew that the shutdown command wasn't even used during normal maintenance. This made him think that someone was deliberately sabotaging the city's defenses. He couldn't believe them. Are they really surrendering the city to monsters? He ordered the city's internal defense systems to be rebooted and continued typing on the keyboard. The crystal started emitting energy. The cannons lit up, and they started firing at the flying monsters. He saw that the systems were back online, and the whole crowd was happy about it. Jai was still focused on his work. The fellow scientist was watching people being rescued. He was glad that the squad was doing disaster drills so often. The church handled evacuation and medical support on the ground. The Intelligence Bureau kept order inside the city. They told civilians where to go and where the bunkers were. And the military had originally planned to leave the fighter squad alone to wear them down during the monster invasion, to the point where the entire city was on the verge of collapse. Therefore, they were forced to intervene. She thought that if they had mobilized earlier, even with the sabotage system, the damage wouldn't have been so great. He knew that this wasn't the end. Even if they rebooted the defense system, the remaining functional turrets still had to hold the defenses at all costs. He realized that the wall could not fall. If they lost it, the city would disappear. Meanwhile, Yi was already breathing heavily. The guy could barely stand. He had already killed tons of monsters, but many of them were still coming. After that last molten spiral, he wouldn't be able to fire another one for a while. He loudly asked Eileen if she had finished yet. At this moment, Yi ran into a large monster. Its body was long, it had several legs, and its mouth was very wide with many sharp teeth. Yi looked exhausted, but he fought against it. He pierced the monster's mouth with his spear, and it exploded. The guy backed away after it landed on the ground. Hatem turned around and decided to check the gun. Eileen said it only needed 2 minutes, but 2 minutes turned into 4, and now it's been almost 10 minutes of him fighting alone. And asked loudly if she was done already. The monster saw the cannon. It moved very fast. The protagonist noticed it. It flew over him. It passed the protagonist and headed straight for the cannon, and became alarmed when he saw it. He moved quickly and jumped on the monster's head. The guy grabbed his spear with both hands and gathered a lot of strength to pierce it. But while he stopped one, the other monster kept moving. He couldn't stop it. Fortunately, the cannon fired and immediately destroyed the thing in front of him. At this point, the GH stood up and asked if it was over. Eileen got out of the control center and replied that it took longer, but the crystal was restored. The cannons continued to fire. Several monsters were hit at the same time. Several men in heavy boots came in. GH saw them, reinforcements. Eileen was glad they were finally in position. She ordered them that the turrets on the wall would be working again soon, but until then, they should hold their defenses at all costs. They all said yes. Immediately, a mob of huge monsters approached the walls, which launched a bunch of eggs forward at the wall. The Salats immediately took aim. The fighter squad opened fire. They started hitting the monsters, and they kept firing. But unfortunately, one of the monsters landed on a soldier, and the soldier was eaten. A co-worker who saw this shot the monster. Then he told his colleague to get up, but he was already dead. But to his surprise, a monster appeared at his side, and it got him in the neck. And then the guy fell down. The other men kept shooting. They kept fighting, despite the tears streaming from their eyes. The monsters were overwhelmed. The battlefield was in chaos. Some were screaming in anger. Some were begging for help. And there was a lot of noise from the monsters. The protagonist also kept fighting. He slashed a big monster. And then he was breathing heavily. The guy looked around and asked the soldiers if they could still hold on. He told them he would cover the other side while they retreated. But when he checked, he was the last one left standing. He turned pale. Everyone was dead. Then he felt anger. Looking at all the monsters around him, he had no feelings left, only anger towards them. And then there was a huge explosion right at the top of the wall. The scene changed. The tower lit up. There was a door under the wall, and it opened. A cannon appeared behind it. It was gigantic compared to a normal cannon. Someone called Eileen. It was headquarters. They informed her that the Guardian cannon was fully charged. The horde of monsters rushed forward. Eileen ordered them to fire. The cannons released powerful beams. Since there were several cannons, they covered a wide area. When the shells hit the ground, they exploded. Immediately, the shockwave and shrapnel killed the piles of monsters, literally wiping them off the face of the earth. And he was watching it, the real war. He had a sullen look on his face. The explosions continued, one after another. Later, the area was cleared. The cannons had finished firing. Zhou Yi saw that most of them were dead, and those who survived ran away. Eileen told him that the Guardian gun kills swarms of these monsters, but it needs a reload before each shot. She clarified that usually when there's a high-end abyss breakout, they detect bursts of energy days or even weeks in advance, and that gives them time to prepare at any possible entry points. But this time it's different, and he was silent. Eileen's body trembled as she admitted that there wasn't even a hint of warning, and just listened. Then he patted her shoulder. There were a lot of bodies in front of them. The guy told her it wasn't her fault. She knew it was. Her tears flowed. She admitted it was hard to bear and wiped them away. Meanwhile, the earth was creeping toward them, leaving a trail of dust behind it. The boy and girl noticed it and marveled, not realizing what was happening. After all, this thing was already very close, and apparently was very big. Suddenly, something appeared from the dust of the ground. It came out and revealed a huge monster. It had several tentacles and was aiming at the cannons. And then it started hitting them. The guy couldn't believe it. The tentacle hit the wall, and it collapsed. Now the guy was just falling. But he was worried when he opened his eyes. Because Eileen was falling with him, too. He used the monkey's extra long arms to reach her. He managed to grab her. And with his other hand, he clawed at the wall, trying not to fall even more. And he succeeded. They stopped in front of the abyss. The girl opened her eyes. She saw that all their guns were destroyed in an instant. The guy was also in shock and didn't understand what was happening. Who he was and where he came from was a huge monster. He had the head of a shark with a big mouth and sharp teeth, several eyes and legs in front, while its body was long and had tentacles on the sides. Eileen and Joe simultaneously told it that they couldn't let it destroy the wall. They immediately moved and jumped up and aimed at his head. Chi. Joe used his spear and Eileen used his blade. They struck at the same time, but nothing happened, not a scratch. He didn't even flinch. That surprised Mr. Cho. He had to step back to get the momentum for the blow. And since he had hard skin, he decided to aim for the eyes. He struck, but his spear couldn't even penetrate the first layer of his eye. Now the guy was completely confused. Then the monster shook him off and he fell down. The monster clung to the wall and started gnawing at it. The guy watched it as he fell. The monster took a big chunk of the wall. Eileen cursed loudly when they landed. She was worried that the wall was about to collapse. They saw that the monster was looking up into the sky. Its mouth was too, but it would have been open by now. The monster was ready to devour them. The blond man saw them. He raised his red hammer and slammed it into the ugly monster's face. The boy and the girl were in shock. They were preparing to die. Eileen recognized the man. It was Captain Lingao. Lingao was the captain of the first squad of the extermination squad. He had joined them. Ji couldn't believe that this uncle was their captain. Eileen proudly introduced the captain of her squad. She stated that he was second only to Commander Corey in the entire fighter force. He said it was because his ability allowed him to control his blood in battle. And he spent years in continuous battles, so he is chronically anemic. The blood was sucked from monster corpses. It turned into fists. The captain controlled a few bloodied fists in the air. She warned Yi not to give in to the deceptive appearance. Yi's eyes widened with shock. The monster was struck by the fist and groaned loudly. It now looked angry. Its limbs then lunged at Lingao. The monster shattered the place where they had just been. Dodging the attack, Yi was worried because the last attack had left a crack in the city wall. And he worried for the captain, but Eileen told him to relax. She knew that such an attack wouldn't do anything to him. Lingao blocked it with a long stick. He was unharmed, and he counterattacked using his large hammer. Then the blood hammer transformed. It became a trap, the one that holds the monster in place. And now the captain was standing right in front of him, as if mocking him. Lingao bit his finger until it bled, and turned to those who lay buried here. He recognized their fear, their rage, and their grief, and told them that he had heard it all. He drew out their blood and joined it together. This created a long sword of blood. He declared that with the remnants of their blood, he would end the beast. The monster roared loudly, as if it sensed its imminent doom. Lingao swung his bloodsword, and it sliced through the monster. Gigi tensely watched it, and the monster exploded, which was not surprising from such a huge sword and a strong blow. The two parts began to separate, and just like that, the monster stayed in two pieces, and couldn't believe the terrifying pressure. Now it knows the strength of the captain of the first squad. After that, it rained bloody rain where Ling Xiao was. He turned to Eileen and told her that he was proud of everyone. He knew that not a single soul had trembled at the end. He felt that even then their blood still burned with fighting spirit. Eileen told him to stop the bleeding from his finger first. He hadn't noticed it because he'd gotten carried away after the warm-up. He looked for his bandage. Eileen gave him hers instead. Ling Xiao stated that revenge would be exacted after he killed the Abyss Lord. Gigi realized that he had no time to relax. Although he has come a long way since his return, compared to his awakened squad captain level, he knew he still had a long way to go. Suddenly, he turned at the noise in the sky and saw planes coming towards them. They were dropping bombs. There were several explosions on the ground. She was inside the mech, and he told Yi that from now on, they could leave it to the Zhang family's technology. He told him that the entire defense system of Nirai City was built on their technology, and by dawn, the repair drones would have the walls back in working order, and he was impressed. He said that compared to this kind of technology, the old outpost seemed like a primitive village. It was understandable why everyone wanted to move to Nirai City. Lingao told Yi that the commander wanted him and Yi to report to the High Council. He added that this includes Jai. He replied that the wall won't be fixed soon, and if they all leave and the monsters come back. Ling Xiao informed him that he was staying. He wished the monsters would come because he could use a warm-up. They obeyed the order. In the Parliament building of Nirai City, Yi, Eileen, and Jai stood in front of the tall screens. She reported on what had happened. Then Yi and Eileen also completed their report. Rhodes looked at them angrily. Jun Seve, the president of the Jun Group and the head of the Jun family, said that the main reason for the breach in Nirai City during the invasion from the Abyss was the deliberate sabotage of the main power system, which prevented the timely activation of all three levels of defense. He added that Eileen's report confirmed that the city's defenses were working normally once power was restored. He suggested that the council launch an investigation. Bai Zhenting, head of the Bai family and director of intelligence, replied that the intelligence department had more urgent business to discuss. Saive objected, saying that Zhenting realized they couldn't blame it on them, so they were just sweeping it under the rug. The woman told them to stop. It was Taija User, the head of the User family and the high priestess of the Church of Espers. She told them that the top priority was to deal with the sudden appearance of the Class A Abyss. The girl asked Commander Corey when the Abyss Suppression Squad would be deployed. Corey replied that the fighter squad and elite fighters from each faction had already been assembled. But there was an incident. He received a message right before the meeting. He showed them a video of a monster similar to the one Ling Xiao defeated, coiling a truck with its tentacles. The man in the video was asking for help. He told them that Object 12 had been invaded by monsters. Eileen explained that it is the most top-secret facility of the Zhang family. Sister Jie is the head of it. Even she doesn't have the clearance to know what they are researching there. Ji was very worried about his sister and was surprised to learn that something so important was not inside the city. Eileen replied that it was supposed to be, but the council had rejected the plan. The security risks of the advanced technology had forced them to move it outside the city walls. Hu realized that it was a deliberate setup. Tsai asked if they'd been evacuated and if his sister was okay. Corey admitted that there had been no warning signals, and almost everyone at the facility was still locked inside. He planned to postpone the deployment and send Ling Xiao to lead a rescue mission to Object 12 first. Taija objected. She said that the church can sense the energy inside the abyss, and it's growing. So if they don't destroy the Overlord soon, things could get out of control. Corey decides to let Captain Pharaoh from Squad 2 handle the rescue, and the suppression squad will proceed on schedule. Zhenting expressed that it wouldn't work, because the current squad didn't meet the minimum requirement of 10 rank 1 awakened needed to raid the Class A Abyss. And even if the commander personally leads them, every rank 1 awakened at the squad level is needed to destroy an Abyss Lord at first strike. CV flared up and accused him of forcing him to move Object 12 outside the city. He asked if he was just going to sit back and let them die. Rhodes Olaf replied that the top priority was to destroy the Lord of the Abyss, and the longer they delayed, the more in danger the city would be. He concluded that the suppression squad would proceed as planned. In his mind, he thought that Sebe was a useless fool for refusing to merge with the Olaf family earlier, and now he expected support. Corey knew that Rhodes gave a noble speech, but in reality, he just wanted to crush the Jung family. He realized that they were up to something. Joey said that he now realized everything. None of them were planning to help. He had caught the attention of all the heads, even the most evil ones, and some were proud of him. Now Joey said that he would go by himself. Just then, the scene changed to a night landscape and a building. There was some kind of helicopter flying in the sky. It was moving towards the rift from which a red aura was coming out, and it was spreading around quite quickly and successfully. Inside the helicopter, Guy learned that all the fighters of the fighter squad had been mobilized to suppress the abyss. The order sounded harsh. Joey must personally lead the rescue squad without support. The Supreme Defense Council categorically rejected the rescue operation. Every single fighter of the fighter squad was required to join the abyss suppression team. The man then declared his informal status and volunteered for the rescue of Object 12. Captain Corey had gone against the council's wishes by secretly leading them past the ground monsters. That was already a big help. The rest of his team members also acted as volunteers. Junjae was here because he was greatly worried about his sister's safety. The two previously doubted competitors and Liu Yao, who was familiar from training in the abyss, joined them. Zhou Yi warned the team about the disparate danger of the mission with Minhai's defense. The message from the GG was interrupted. The fighters pledged their loyalty with glee. Liu reminded Guy of her saved life and unspoken gratitude. The plane was approaching the drop point. The team was ordered to prepare for landing. The man briefly thanked her for her trust and gave the order to begin the operation. And as the plane landed, everyone was already definitely ready to begin the mission. The door began to slowly open, and as soon as it opened, an armored military vehicle came out of the plane's hull. In the front sat the protagonist and looked at the departing helicopter. Then he turned to his passenger who was saying something about benefactors. It was Jay. He said that right before the flight, his father had shared his regret of weakness and acknowledged Guy's help. Junjae swore the family's eternal gratitude for Gigi saving them both. Guy turned to Jay and said he understood the feelings of those trapped in the facility. Someone has to rescue them. Guy explained the motive. Inaction would lead to regret. He wished to remain himself. Joey asked to stop calling him benefactor, emphasizing the slight age difference. The night grew deeper and deeper. Somewhere a flame was breaking out. They were entering a city that was in chaos. As soon as the scientists stopped the car, everyone began to get out quickly. The man noted the signs of the monster's attack, comparing the destruction to Minhaj. The guy realized with dismay that they might have been too late in arriving on the scene. Just as suddenly, moaning began to be heard from under the rubble. The group was greatly surprised, and then someone's pale and broken arm appeared out of the rubble. Gigi immediately ran forward, saying that there is clearly someone there. Suddenly, the first half of a person already appeared from under the rubble. He was reaching out his hand towards the main characters, but could only groan. Junjae, breathing heavily, rushed to the rescue, urging the injured to hold on. He would help now. But something alerted GH and he rounded his eyes. Their hands almost joined together. A warning of immediate danger sounded for Junjae. Suddenly, his arm and body were attacked by some aquatic creature. It even had eyes. Joey commented with horror at the sudden appearance of this monster. It turned out that the monster had deliberately ambushed the rescue team here. In a moment, the monster was already charging over the poor scientist's head. The guy who had a symbiosis with the monster asked to be killed. The guy was shocked. It turned out that the wounded man was being used as ambush bait by the monster. He immediately struck with his sword. He and the water were immediately separated by the guy with the blade. The water began to regenerate quickly, and the monster was once again standing with Gigi's friend and glaring at him. Chu immediately activated his imbue vision and began to analyze. The man explained the nature of the young liquid Goliath, which consisted of liquid. Joey shouted to Junjae that physical strikes were useless. He needed to find the crystal. The guy noted with annoyance the invisibility of the monster's weak spot on his shoulder. He decided to act drastically, preparing to attack. The man announced his intention to completely freeze the liquid opponent. The scientist used all his power to stop the monster with ice, and the face of the mad monster split in two, and the shards were scattered in the neighborhood. Some time passed, the night came. Junjae touched the corpse and was horrified to recognize his recent colleague as the dead man. The boy remembered the casualties on the outpost's food retrieval teams. He stated the harsh reality of the apocalypse. where not everyone survives. The fighter reported to the captain that there was no sign of survivors nearby. Lu asked with despair, wondering if there were no survivors here. They aren't picking up any signals? Jay was very upset. He was crying. But suddenly he remembered something. The man turned around and started shouting that the main part of the facility was protected underground. Jun-jae expressed alarm for the fate of his sister and other staff members. He confidently stated that the people were still trapped below and alive. Meanwhile, the shouting and shining grew brighter and brighter. None of the team had expected something like this in this particular place. The huge blue monster moved forward. Oh my God, how many heads did it have up there? The scientist was shocked. Immediately, Jay rushed forward towards his enemies. He raised his fists and was already in the air starting to hammer the monster. But it wasn't that easy. His armor on his fists was quickly melting, and the monster kept encompassing them around and was already acting very brazenly. Suddenly, Lu intervened and sent her electric charges forward. The monster didn't waste any time either and moved towards them, but masterfully flew and absorbed, and now even more surrounded the heroes. Then already they were encompassed on all sides by some red tail, and squeezed very tightly, lifting them from the ground. Yu in his new armor watched in shock. It was his red fingers. Gigi pulled on them, and now his friends escaped death from the tentacle. And the bespectacled man sat on his knees, knowing he was surrounded and doomed. He sat there almost crying and thinking about his sister. Suddenly, there were messages on his phone. Someone desperately trying to reach him from underground. Now the guy was glad because he recognized that voice. It was his sister's voice. Junjae called out to his sister hopefully, looking at the screen of the phone. Someone on the screen was watching the guy being surrounded by a water monster. It was a group of scientists who had access to all the cameras in the research center. Among them was his sister Jun Yi, who demanded attention, communicating an urgent plan of action. First, he needed to distract the monsters. The scene switched to another group of warriors, trapped by a monster as well. Gigi stood in shock at what had happened to his arm. At this time, a kid with glasses was running towards them. Junjae quickly commanded the group to follow him. Over the walkie-talkie, his sister pointed them in the direction, ordering them to move to the right without delay. She gave clear instructions to make a left turn and climb. So they did, leaving the water monster a little behind. Soon a gate appeared before them, and Jay realized it was exactly what they needed. The man hurried the men to take shelter in the safe room, seeing the approaching threat. There wasn't much time left, and the guy shouted to everyone, "Close the door!" And a second before they were killed, the water monster just hit the closed airtight door. This made him angry. He even growled a bit before entering. And behind them inside, the whole group was already resting from such a march. They looked up and saw a huge screen with a picture of a woman on it. It was Jay's sister, and she was smiling at the fact that they had managed to get here. The kid himself was happy to see her too, because he thought they were too late. The scientist happily stated that she had made it, announcing the creation of the growing crystal. Joey politely interrupted the relatives' conversation to clarify the situation. "What's even going on right now?" Junyi apologized, saying that she was completely lost with joy after seeing her brother. She said there was a momentary siege of the facility after the invasion. They didn't have time to evacuate. She clarified the targeting of the monsters' attack on their compound. The monsters were conducting a relentless attempt to breach the dungeon. She hypothesized the control of all the creatures by the Abyss Lord. The squad girl asked in amazement about the keeping and researching of living monsters in the lab. Sister Jun-jae explained the limitations of power growth through alien crystals. That was why they needed them. Liquid golems evolved by absorbing the weakest individuals. The scientists used this trait to create the growing crystals. Jun-jae admiringly confirmed his sister's success. Jun-wine explained the availability of the crystals to unlock their full potential, but warned of the lack of instant amplification from the technology. Guy interrupted the discussion with a comment about how she should keep it here. He knew he should congratulate her, but noted the impossibility of their squad breaking through the main entrance. He asked, how would they get to the scientists? Junyi demanded to leave them behind and rescue the data. Pressing a single button, the girl suggested a path to the database to evacuate the research. She showed a schematic of the complex and declared the facility lost to further operation. The sister emphasized the priority of crystal technology over lives. Junjae flatly rejected the suggestion to leave the group and watch them die. Junyi started shouting that nothing was more important than growing crystals. But upon hearing the firm rejection, she was surprised. The protagonist told her that as long as she had a better plan, he would go storm the facility himself. Junyi wasn't too happy about that. She then suggested using the sealed transportation tunnels. They could evacuate on them. But she specified total destruction of the control center and no power on the rails. They needed to do two things: restore power on the surface and open the Minhaj gates. She warned of the noise from the gate, which would attract all the monsters to the one who opened it, and the general mortal danger. The boy insisted on advancing to the rail system together. The man divided the tasks like this. Junjae takes care of the power. He takes care of the gate. After a while, they were already at the feeding station. The two boys were shocked by all this stuff. It really did look complicated. The guy gave clear instructions to the two fighters to synchronize their actions. He explained the procedure for simultaneous activation when the light signal appeared. The fighters confirmed their readiness to fulfill the captain's orders, and Jay tapped into the system. His sister and the group were in contact with him. He reported a successful connection to the control system. In 10 minutes, the light would be on. The guy requested the status from the gate group, which was advancing through the complex with great speed. Finally, the target appeared in front of them. Zhou Yi confirmed the arrival at the main gate of the complex. He guaranteed readiness until power was restored. Jay indicated a 30-second window of opportunity to open the gate. The man emphasized the criticality of opening the gate in time for traffic. The guy ordered them to move as quickly as possible. At this time, the sister gave the order to evacuate the research materials urgently. All the scientists ran around and gathered documents. One of them additionally demanded a copy of the final experimental video. The assistant reported loading all the injured into the transport car. Over the comms, Junyi confirmed full readiness at her position. Sis gave the command to board the transport immediately. Anything they didn't have time to collect stays here. Feet stomped even louder and more frequently. She was hustling the last of the scientists. Jay began counting down the last 10 seconds and requested confirmation of boarding. Zhou Yi reported that the gate was ready. The transport car took the starting position for evacuation. Changji gave the starting report, and 3 seconds later, the power was turned on. The lights really came on everywhere, blinding the remaining people. And even the transportation lights came on. The nurse joyfully announced that the power supply to the underground station had been completely restored. But one of the scientists looked questioningly at the window, and then he saw something that horrified him. The monster had already made its way inside and was ready to attack them. This time it was ready to complete its task. Junyi ordered everyone to hold tightly inside the wagon. She pressed the button, and the train simply roared out of the way, quickly moving away from the water monster, who tried to whip them with water for the last time. But the door in front of them was open, and the train sped through it at breakneck speed. But the monster wasn't going to back down and flew in after them, clinging to the train and starting the corrosion process. The scientist from the window saw this and demanded maximum acceleration from the vehicle. The monsters rapidly shortened the distance to the fugitives. The pilot confirmed the operation of the engines at maximum power. And now the jaws of the water bastards opened, and they were ready to devour the scientists. As suddenly fire and explosions erupted in front of the water. The guy looked at this and was shocked, because now even the cannons in the compound were now helping them get away from this monster. They were firing aptly and without stopping, all thanks to Junjai standing next to them, who remotely activated the defensive turrets. Everyone in the carriage exhaled as they were safe for a while longer, and the sister sat in the onboard computer, adjusting something. Suddenly an error popped up. The system didn't register the opening signal of the main gate. The sister was shocked. What had happened to the gate? And the scene went straight to them. They were cracking open. But the wider could not do it. Zhou Yi angrily stated the technical failure of the mechanism. He emphasized the fact that they had no time to think or change the plan. They must act. The scene changed. Zhong Yi was now standing in some kind of tricked-out armored suit. Junjae asked his sister sharply about her inexplicable actions at the critical moment. The girl ordered the teenager to stay out of it and focus on the main task at hand. She demanded the guy to ensure the safe evacuation of people by transportation, and flew out of the train. Moving through the complex, the girl announced the forced decision to open the last underground level. She planned to distract the monsters by releasing their lord to the surface. Jachi was still staring at the gate, and asked anxiously about the malfunctioning of the main gate of the complex. The train was already close by. Jay detected the transport car approaching the evacuation point, and they jumped onto the roof with the two guys. Jay immediately jumped inside the rail car, and there inside he saw his sister again. There were tears of happiness on his face. He was relieved to note the group's successful exit from the tunnel. The sister demanded to stop talking from behind the unopened gate, and the scene shifted back to them. Lou diagnosed a critical failure of the hydraulic system. Guy proposed an emergency plan to leave the transport when the operation failed. His sister abruptly turned him down and warned of imminent death from monsters if the wagon was abandoned. She emphasized the vital importance of transportation to return to the city. At this time, the protagonist stood in the gate and tried to push it open. He had already activated his giant monkey arms and began to push even harder, realizing that many people's lives depended on it. Lou relayed the captain's decision to physically open the gate with the force. The bearded scientist asked incredulously about this plan. He recalled the four 10,000-ton hydraulic presses to move the gates. Yi himself thought that his efforts were futile. The guy couldn't move the gate even with his snake monkey arm activated. He decided to radically transform his body into an opening mechanism. Claws made of reinforced bones showed on his hands. The man activated the sticky tongue ability to create extra force. He explained the use of the tongue to apply tension to open the gate. The guy then activated the poisonous spider sting to secure his legs. He described the sting's function as an anchor against kickback. The captain activated elastic muscles to concentrate his strength and hooked his arms around the gate, exerting even more force. He was at his limit. The system warned of critical muscle tears and the start of repairs. The girl was shocked. He gathered all the strength through the elastic muscles in a final attempt and ordered it to move. The boy desperately demanded movement from the unyielding gate, and the gate began to open, confirming the success of the crazy plan. The girl next to him was in shock. The scholars opened their mouths as well. Junjae and his sister watched in amazement as the strategy worked. The captain requested 3 extra minutes for completion. Then he thought and reduced the required time to 2 minutes. A trickle of water monster parts were already sliding down the wall, and then they rushed forward and grabbed Gigi by the arm. At such an inopportune moment, Guy cursed the monsters that appeared at the critical moment. He reported his inability to distract himself and asked for support. Jay immediately asked him, could he hold on a little longer? Just as suddenly, someone behind him flicked his hazmat suit. The scene changed to the gate once again. It was as if the monster had become even more aggressive. All the nearby monsters started moving towards the group's position. Lou anxiously noted the critical number of approaching enemies. She and Yi were now separated by a huge slug. Sister Zori informed Yi of the plan to release the monster lord to distract them. She asked to speed up the opening of the gate before the train arrived. Gigi was already face to face with that water bastard, and the monster swallowed his head. The scene shifted to the train car, which was being carried at an incredible speed. The attendant pointed out a visible gate ahead to Junjae. He stated reaching the gate while making it impossible for the train to stop. The transport was moving at half power with no reserve for braking. The fighter warned that it was impossible to reduce speed further. Everything in the carriage was shaking. Scientists recorded the appearance of monsters over the transportation tunnel. It was right on top of the train. She realized that emergency acceleration was their only chance to save themselves. And without a second thought, he pressed the button. The train car immediately pulled away from the monster. The people inside watched it through the windows, and they saw it moving away very little. And then the boy realized that the load dump maneuver had not thrown off the pursuers. The spikes from the water were coming closer, and soon the monster was quite near again, and quickly grabbed the guy who had gaped and looked at it too long, then dragged him away with him. By now, the monster was almost in the cabin. Panic gripped the people at the sight of impending doom. The scientists just watched and waited for their doom. And the bearded man also watched, but not so submissively. Just then, the suit locks on his arms clicked, and the latches on his legs. She was shocked to see Uncle Day in an armored suit. The veteran addressed the younger generation as the future of humanity. He suggested that the old men cover the retreat with their last forces and ran towards the monster. Jay was shocked at such heroism and shouted no. The old man immediately pounced on the monster with his whole mass, and the self-destruct button on his suit lit up. And a second later, there was an explosion in the monster's place. Jay cried because he had lost someone dear to him. At the same time, Lu was actively fighting the monster, which kept choking GG and prevented him from opening the gate. Sad Jay cursed loudly, lowering his head and sobbing even more. Then something very violent rumbled. Everyone immediately had to cover their ears in order not to lose their hearing. The partner was in shock and didn't understand. What was going on? Jay was completely shocked and pointed forward, because now all the monsters had now turned around and headed towards the main building of the complex.